Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brabber, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and we apologize that we couldn't do our weekly Sunday night show. I did try to warn as many of you guys as I could. I know that some of you were still shocked and appalled and likely traumatized for life. But we're here now, and we are going to be talking, as we always do, about the past week of NFL action. We are each going to give 5 big takeaways of ours from Week 11, Logan. So I will throw it over to you to get us started. What is your first big takeaway that stands out?
This may seem controversial. I still don't think the Lions are worse than the Eagles. And I think the Lions are still a legitimate contender, man. I'm not ready to write them off after this week. First of all, I just want to get this out there. I don't know how you felt about the end of the game, man. The game ended on some bullshit, dude. That just pissed me off, man. I invested all that time on my Sunday night into this, admittedly, pretty shitty football game. Like, not very exciting. There were very few big plays. They were few and far between. I just, like, man, give the Lions an opportunity, bro. And don't do it on a Rock Yassine's a great man coverage corner, man. That was not DPI. Like, that just crushed my vibe and pissed me off Sunday night, man.
That was horrific. It was a fantastic game from Rock Yassine, and that was a great rep, and like he did everything needed to get his team one last chance with the football. It's one of the worst calls that I've seen this season. So I agree with you completely there. That was criminal. That being said, what are the chances that the Lions were actually going to drive down and score a touchdown with how the offense had looked? Like, very low. So obviously that doesn't change that it's a horrific call. But at least I think we can take some solace in the fact that it probably didn't actually change the outcome of the game. But it did deprive us of entertainment, and Detroit fans should rightfully be pissed.
Well, and this is just the second primetime game where it's like there should be a lot of magnifying glasses on, or there have been, on, I don't know, man. There's been a sour taste left in my mouth from both the Chiefs game and the Eagles game against Detroit now.
It's brutal also that there's no review system for PI, and I understand why that's the case, but when you see just a total phantom one like that.
The solution to me, and it has always been, I get that these guys are part-time. Find the refs, man. Like, we need some sort of accountability system where checks and balances. That's what I've always thought. It's never going to happen.
Yeah.
But
what I think's hard about that is they're not intentionally blowing the calls, you know? Like, I don't know that punishment improves performance. Like, if they're scared, oh man, if I fuck this call up, I'm going to get fined, that doesn't mean that they're actually going to make a better call, you know? Like, I'm not saying that
That's
is
fair.
Not appropriate to do, because it's like, you fucked up in a major way that had major ramifications. You should be punished for that, but I don't think that that's going to be the thing that next time leads that ref to properly assess whether or not it was pass interference.
Yeah, you can't ever get rid of human error fully out of, like, football games. It's just frustrating, man. But I completely agree with the point that you're making here, that I don't think the Lions were going to march back down there. Jared Goff did not make the plays. He was 14 of 37 on the night. And the Eagles did what they're really good at and what neutralizes this Lions offense, and they took away the running game. The Lions are one of those teams where if you force Jared Goff to throw the ball, that's the recipe that you want for the Lions. It was their third worst rushing output overall on the season, just 74 yards on the ground. They finished 3 of 13 on third down, 0 of 5 on fourth down. And the one narrative that I really didn't get out of this game, Carson, was the fact that a lot of people were coming at Dan Campbell's head for one, decision-making and play calling. On both of those fronts, I disagree. I thought Dan called a good game, and I like the aggression in all of his spots. This is one of the things that we praise Detroit for when they are winning games, right? I don't get how we can just flip this switch and do this complete 180 on the Lions when this is a superpower of this team. They get into short yardage situations and they convert. They execute in big leverage situations. That's the difference to me in this game. They just didn't execute. Jared Goff didn't make the plays. And so I don't get why there is a ton of blame laying at the feet of Dan Campbell for, one, his play calling, which I thought he got guys open. Maybe you can criticize the running game, but I just think that's advantage Eagles in the trenches, you know? So I didn't understand some of the narratives coming out of this game. And look, Eagles fans, I apologize. I have picked against you damn near every week in game picks. Carson has too. I get you guys are frustrated.
Damn near every week. Whoa.
Well, I'm just
Settle
saying.
down there, Johnny.
Normal, I don't mean every week, but 50-50 balls, we have normally gone against the Eagles. Like the Lions, I took them. The Rams, I took them. Yes, I have been an Eagles skeptic, and still, I feel pretty underwhelmed by Philly. Like, they have won all the important games, and I do want to give respect to their defense. I feel like that's a part of this team that I haven't given enough respect to. I think they've been an excellent red zone group this year. That is the biggest strength of this team, that they're 46% in the red zone. That is an amazing number. They're third in the league right now in that category. And that's the strength of this offense, too. When they get into these short yardage situations, they can always convert because they're so strong. Every time I back out on the Eagles, they prove me wrong, but I just don't feel fundamentally different about the Lions. I was ready to bail on the Lions early this year. I still think this team is too talented. Do we know their flaw? Yes. You see it on display against the Eagles. And Carson, it's something that we've said about Detroit every year. Are you going to get the Jared Goff goofer game? When it happens, it is almost impossible to overcome because he's shown that in these cold weather games, these important ones where they can't run the football, it's hard to depend on him to make the plays. And that is still the biggest flag, I think, about this team, but they're too talented for me to write off, and I like their philosophy. I really like the fact that they are this aggressive, and I think that is the strength of this football team.
Yeah, well, I want to give a ton of credit to Philly because I am not underwhelmed after this game. Also, it's true neither of us have been the highest on Philly. I have been a little higher on them than you. I have given a bit more deference and respect
I was ready to
the
jump
roster
ship,
and what they did last year. Yeah, you pretty much did jump ship after their back-to-back losses. You said, I'm out, and I've always had them in at least my top 6 contenders, but they did impress me this week. I do think that they're better than Detroit, and the reason is that their defense has rounded into such dominant form these last couple weeks. They are now starting to look pretty close to that 2024 group, which was one of the best defenses we've seen in a long time. If you look before they traded for Jalen Phillips, their defense was pretty average statistically in a lot of these metrics, yards allowed per drive, points allowed per drive. And on the season, I still don't think the numbers reflect just how great they have been playing recently. I mean, absolutely shut down the Packers, absolutely shut down the Lions. That being said, I don't think that this is totally damning for Detroit because I do think it was such an elite defensive performance. On the decision-making front, I have no issues with what Dan Campbell did. Literally the only one that I would criticize is the fake punt, because my thing is 4th and 2, your own 43. Who exactly do you think you're fooling in the big 2025, Dan? The second they lined up to punt, I was like, watch the fun. And yeah, guess what? Philly was prepared for that. I just think when you're a great offense, put your great offensive players out there and try to win straight up instead of catching them off guard with something that's not going to catch anybody off guard at this point. I really do think, though, it was just Goff's struggles that held Detroit back. But if you go one by one, 4th and 1 at midfield for Detroit, that is an obvious go. 4th and 5 at the 32, I can see that being sort of a toss-up, but it was brutal wind, obviously. They missed the 48-yard extra point, so I don't think they had confidence in their kicking game in that spot. I'm good with that decision. When you are down 7 in the second half and you've got 4th and goal inside the 5, that's a no-brainer go. And then they had a 4th and 3 at the 35. I think they were down 10 at that point. You need a touchdown. And that's going to be a really hard field goal. So in all these situations, I thought the risk reward justified going for it. And this is one of the most infuriating things to me, where people always only talk about analytics-based decisions when they don't work. Detroit coming into this game was 13 of 18 on 4th down. Last year, they converted 67% of their 4th downs. Overwhelmingly, this works for them. It is a huge net positive. And to look at the one game when it doesn't work and say, oh, that was the problem, I think it's just silly. Like you said, it's not process, it's execution. Detroit knows that they have 4 downs in these spots. That's their philosophy, and they're usually great at it. Jared Goff just had a really bad game, and Philly made him really uncomfortable. So That's the significance. But I will say, the looming concern that I do have about Detroit, when we talk about them up against the elite teams in football and the elite offenses in football, it is this Goff component. And he was brutal today. I don't want to do a whole cold weather Goff thing. I know there's some concerning numbers there where he has struggled a bit in the outdoor cold weather environments, but he was 7 of 27 beyond the line of scrimmage, Logan. I think there was a stretch in the game when he completed 2 of 17 passes. Like, he was just completely in hell. And that's where I want to give a ton of credit to Philly's defense, because Jalen Phillips, I do think, has been such a great addition for them. They needed somebody who could consistently win from that edge spot. He's got 12 pressures in 2 games. Like, he has been a game changer. And then I thought the coverage was like some of the best we've seen from any team all season. Quinyon Mitchell did not allow a completion all game. He was outstanding. Adoree Jackson, man, was fantastic with a lot of reps on Amon-Ra St. Brown and really held him in check. So you give a ton of credit to the defense, but then also you know that, like, Goff's inability to throw off platform, to extend plays whatsoever, it's just the limitation that he has that these elite quarterbacks on these other elite teams just don't. And if you can force them into a very pass-heavy game plan, maybe in cold weather, against an elite defense that's able to pin their ears back because they know that you're throwing, like, he's just more limited.
That's a great point, too, the game script and the fact that Goff's limitations allow you to schematically prepare for, like, you know, against a Lamar, you're so worried about him getting out of the pocket, or you're talking about them creating. You don't have to worry about that with Goff, and that is a fundamental limitation. I also think the big limiter, and I don't want to bury this here, it is the fact that Jared Goff is very rattled by pressure, and that's the big thing, is that very early on in this game, they were getting home, and he has a tendency to melt down. And I don't know how you feel about this. I was thinking about this during the game, and I know he had a really bad week too. I feel like I prefer Sam Darnold to Jared Goff now. And I know that Darnold had a bad game, but my thing is, I actually ironically feel that Darnold's floor is higher than Goff's. I feel like Goff is, and it's close. Like, I think they're very, very similar, but I think I marginally prefer Darnold. And I think he has a little bit more creation upside and mobility than Jared does. But
he does. I think for both of them, the floor is really, really low. It's really low. After what we saw from Darnold this past week, I don't know how we could not say that when he's under significant pressure and he's trying to make these throws out of condensed pockets that he just doesn't have the physical strength, leverage to make. And 4 picks, man, like, both of these guys, I would say, very much have in common the fact that 9 out of 10 weeks, they are awesome. And they are at the top of the league in all these different quarterback metrics. And that 1 out of 10 is about as ugly as it gets. And both of those guys had that really, really ugly game this past week against elite defenses. But it's like, shocker, that's when it's going to happen. You mentioned the point about Goff under pressure, man. He is 29th in terms of total EPA under pressure this year. Really struggled. And I do think it comes back to that ability, or inability, I should say, to move, to evade pressure, to extend plays whatsoever. Like, you get to a point where you're probably just going to force a ball, and it just gets dangerous. So that was really, really bad from him. What did you make of the Eagles' offense? Because if you're saying that you're not super moved by this from Philly, it has to be because you're still holding out major doubts about that offense, right?
Yeah, I'm just not moved by them. Now, I was encouraged by the fact that they were able to run the ball, like, and control the line of scrimmage and the ball against Detroit. I think that's an important component in beating them, keeping it out of their hands. But, like, I'm just not moved by Jalen Hurts at this point in the season, Carson, and I don't really know what to make of it. I empathize and sympathize with the fact that Jalen Hurts has had a different offensive coordinator and play caller. I think they said this on the broadcast, every season of his career since Bama or something like that. Yeah. Like, he is literally, every season he is suited up for football, he has had a different guy leading the charge. So I know that must be incredibly frustrating, but it's just not frustrating just for me, but, like, it's got to be frustrating for, like, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, these super talented guys, where it just feels pointless games where you're doing all this for nothing. It didn't come back to get them in a game like this, and this is what I keep harping on with Philadelphia. Philadelphia has one of the highest floors in football. That is why they are so good.
Yeah.
They are so strong in the trenches, and they are so talented in the aggregate around the trenches that it builds them this incredible margin where they can Philly can impose their will on other teams in a way that other teams can't, and I want to give them credit for that. But my point of contingency with Philly and why I consistently doubt them is if their offense doesn't show up and the opponent hits on a few big shot plays over the top through the air and they get, like the Rams, like Stafford, and then beat them through the air. And I know they beat them earlier this year. They had an incredible second-half comeback to make that happen, and they had to block a kick at the end. I don't want to rewrite that game. That's just to add context, but I fear in a game script like that if the Eagles got hit in the jaw early and a lot of points on some big shot plays, some busted coverages, they wouldn't be able to come back. I just feel like the Philly has to win a rigid game script, and they've answered the call. I can't even say it. Mm-hmm. Like, in those games when their backs have been against the wall, Jalen Hurts has answered that call this year. I don't want to rewrite that. That being said, I'm just skeptical of how likely it is when it needs to be done. Hurts just doesn't. And I don't know if it's Hurts. That's what I'm saying, too. I've seen Hurts play good football. It could be the play calling in this offense. I understand that because I've seen Hurts play great ball. No, man. I'm not moved at all by this Philly offense at this point in the season. I just think they are very average. And I have a hard time betting on a very average offense to go and win the Super Bowl.
I get it. And average, honestly, is probably generous at this point. Like, this offense is 26th in yards per drive. They are 22nd in points per drive. They are 25th in yards per rush attempt. Like, as amazing as their defense has been these past 2 weeks, and it has been fantastic, their offense put up 10 points, and that was enough for them to win. Their offense put up 16 points, and that was enough for them to win. So, like, that's where I think the reason that I'm a little higher on Philly than you are is although their offense all year has been mediocre to bad, we know that there is potential for it to be more. Now, I am certainly not all in on that potential, but with very similar personnel, we did see this team really hit their offensive stride late last year, and we know that the defense right now is playing so well that it does give them a pretty damn high floor. I am concerned about the offense. That's why I'm not looking at this Philly team and saying, oh yeah, they should be your Super Bowl favorite, because ultimately I think your ability to put up points is hugely important when you're talking about a playoff run. You're going to have to win some game probably with your offense. We haven't seen somebody execute that like overwhelmingly defensive-centric formula to win it all since the 2015 Broncos. It's been a long time. You have to have firepower. Philly does potentially have firepower, but also it's kind of the definition of insanity if you keep on saying, yeah, but it can get better. Yeah, but it can get better. We're not 4 or 5 weeks into the season now. We're 10 games deep, and they're having all of the same issues. They're a terrible third down offense. People want to make it all about Patullo and the play calling, and I do think that Patullo is bad. I think that he lacks creativity. I think that he is extremely conservative, like to a pretty crazy extent when you consider the playmakers they have on the outside and Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. But also, in this game, I thought that Hurts was bad as a thrower. I thought that he was making iffy decisions, testing like some pretty much smothered receivers. I thought that he missed every throw when they had a chance to hit on a deep ball. And really the thing that I thought he did best was use his legs in certain spots. And I just think he has to keep doing more of that. I thought he was most effective as a scrambler. I think this year is the least that he's scrambled overall. He should get back to doing more of that, because ultimately when it comes to the processing, the consistency of the passing, like, we know who Jalen Hurts is, and he struggles with that stuff and is ultimately pretty average in that aspect of the game. It can get better. I don't know that it will get better, but it really is about the defense playing so well, where there's 2 teams right now, and they're pretty much atop of each conference in Philly and Denver that are bad offenses and have been bad offenses all year. And on the back of amazing defense, they're winning ugly, and they're sitting here at 9-2 and 8-2. It's not my favorite playoff formula for sure, because I think offense matters so much. But the distinction that I would make is Denver has been a bad offense for 2 years. I just don't think they have the personnel to be a good offense. Philly absolutely does have the talent, and that's where there is some embedded faith here. I wouldn't say that they're my favorite in the NFC, but they're probably my second favorite because, as we've talked about ad nauseum, everybody has flaws this year. Everybody has significant flaws this year.
Here's the last component that I think has been really impressive about the Eagles' offense. I don't think there's a lot to write home about, and this is why they scare me as well. It's a double-edged sword. They have committed the fewest turnovers of any team this year. And one, I think that is kind of a testament to what you're talking about the play calling and how they're not really trying to force things. I also will give credit to Jalen Hurts for being a big part of that. That is really impressive that he threw. Like, that is the one thing I will give him credit for, and he has been very good at that the past 2 years, not giving the ball away. And so winning the turnover margin, dominating on defense, that is a really good formula. That's another thing, though, that scares me about this team. I'm talking about a game script where they could get behind early. We also haven't seen them with a game script where they have lost the turnover differential and had to overcome something like that. Where, again, a blanket statement, obviously it's hard for any team to overcome losing the turnover differential. It decides a lot of games. Yeah. But Philly more so than other teams, I think, would struggle. And it worries me about them. But, damn it, man. I mean, like, Philly's as flawed as I think Philly is, like, they are as solid as anybody else at this point in the season. Like, they have eked out and executed in more big spots than a lot of other teams. And they have some really good statement victories, man. Back-to-back wins over the Packers, Lions. They've got wins over the Chiefs, the Rams, like the Bucks. I can't ignore that.
What I will say, though, is defense, ball control, keeping turnovers low, that wins a lot of games. That does not win Super Bowls. So if I'm Philly, philosophically, like, we know that we can win a lot of regular season games. We've done that every year in recent years. I would be more inclined, if I'm Kevin Patullo, and I think that he is the problem here, to say, all right, let's take the training wheels off of this offense more so. Let's be more aggressive now. Let's let it rip more now, because long-term, that is going to be what's more important to us. And maybe it costs us one regular season game, but we're ultimately better prepared and more comfortable playing the kind of football we're going to need to be able to play, where we're going to have to rip off some of these chunk plays, where we're going to have to lean on the passing game a little bit more. And obviously, that's never going to be Philly's strength as a football team and as an offense, but also, like, the run game hasn't been their strength this year. The run game has not been anything close to what it was last year. So they're an interesting team. I am generally opposed to the philosophy of, like, they're just winning, so everything's fine. Like, I think Philly's offense is very, very noteworthy as a point of concern here. That being said, when I compare it to all of the other concerns and I consider the defensive dominance we're seeing, the potential for offensive improvement, I can't say that I'm underwhelmed by Philly right now, or else I would say that I'm underwhelmed by pretty much everybody, which maybe that's kind of true this year. I do want to give a very quick shout out to the Detroit defense, though, because I thought their short yardage defense was excellent. I mean, they really stood up to Philly in a couple of those 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 spots that basically nobody does. And I thought their corner play was excellent. We talked about Rock Yassin, but Amik Robertson, we saw some really high-level corner play in this one. Adoree Jackson for Philly, I mentioned, was great in this one. He has had a rough year overall, especially early in the year, but if he plays anything like he played this past week, I mean, that just makes the defense even greater.
I was just going to say, dude, you know, we always tip our cap to Seattle, or I always do, to them having the best secondary in the NFL. Detroit might be there, or is pretty damn close, man, with the safety tandem, with the play out of their corners this year. And Rock Yassin has just been an awesome, awesome pickup for them.
Yeah, well, let's not exclude Philly from those conversations, too, because they are also loaded in the secondary. I'll talk about another team that's loaded in the secondary, Logan, and another team that, as we were talking about, just keeps winning ugly. The Denver Broncos went out there and beat the Kansas City Chiefs. I've got a lot to say about both teams from this game, but I actually want to start with Kansas City because the story of their season, to me, more than anything else, is just that they have had one of the craziest swings in luck that I've ever seen. Last year, the Kansas City Chiefs were 12-0 in one-score games. That's the best mark ever. This year, they are 0-5 in one-score games. They have a higher point differential this season, plus 7.3 per game, than they did when they were 15-1 last year, not even including the Week 18 game where they sat everybody against Denver. They only had a plus 6.1 point differential, which was the lowest ever by far for a team being that great. But it's just insane how many of these markers you can look at and say Kansas City is as good, if not better this year than they were last year. And here they're sitting at 5-5 when they were 15-1. Last year, they were 10th in points per drive, 13th in points per drive allowed. This year, they're 2nd in points per drive and 7th in points per drive allowed. The passing game is more explosive. The receivers are better. Mahomes has been better. The run game, I would say, is better than last year. I've seen some great stats about Kansas City's run game. Ben Solak tweeted out, they have the lowest explosive run rate of this century. But I also saw a stat that they get stuffed on the lowest percentage of their runs that we've seen in a long time. So it's literally basically a guaranteed single. You're going to pick up a couple yards on the ground. And personally, I think absolutely that lack of explosiveness holds them back. We've talked about it. Their running back talent, frankly, just sucks. They have not prioritized the run game like they needed to. But I do think it's at least been a little bit more consistent than last year. But they're 5-5, and we've kind of given them this benefit of the doubt. Forget about the record. The Chiefs look really good. They're hitting some of these key marks that we would want to see them hit. But they're 2-5 against good teams, dude. And that's got to mean something. That being said, I don't know where the consensus is at with the Chiefs right now. I'm still not panicking. This reminds me a lot of the 2023 Bills. That was a team that started 6-6, and then they won out. And the concern was not ever ooh, how good are you actually, right? The concern wasn't, oh man, have you totally fallen off? It's more so, now you're here 10 games into the season, 12 games into the season. You're sitting at 500. Can you overcome this hole that you've dug yourself to get to the playoffs? Can you be great enough down the stretch? That's the call that Kansas City has to answer now. I look at their schedule. I think they should win 5 of their last 7, and that should be enough. They have the Colts next week. That's a huge game. Then they go at Dallas, Texans, Chargers, at Titans, Broncos, Raiders. There's a couple of gimmies in there, but there's also some dangerous, tough games in there. The biggest being Indianapolis this week. That's a massive, massive game. And then the Broncos rematch, obviously, and the Chargers game is a big one too. But they don't have the Ravens luxury that we've been talking about of sitting at 5-5, but only being a game back in the division. They're 3.5 games back of the division. That is all but cooked for them. They are chasing a wild card spot at this point. They have to make it that way, and all of the current wildcard teams, the Bills, the Chargers, and the Jags, have beaten them head-to-head, so they don't have the tiebreaker in any of those spots. So I do view the Chargers with just their decimated offensive line and the Jags with their inconsistencies, although shout out Liam Cohen, the GOAT, as being quite vulnerable, and so I would still pick the Chiefs to make it, but it's certainly no guarantee at this point.
It's kind of ironic, man. That's my take about the Chiefs, too. I think they're going to be fine. I get that. I agree with you on the schedule point. The margin has shrunk for Kansas City. They have to execute down the stretch like they have. They've made their bed, and they gotta lay in it. But I do think they're going to be fine. I see the talk about it, and a couple of years ago, man, friend of the show, Gabe Schwartz, he was panicking after this game, too. Obviously, he lost to Bo Nix and the Broncos. Never a great look. But he told me 3-4 years ago, a really good acronym, WHPM. We've said it on here. We have Patrick Mahomes. It's I'm not worried about the Chiefs, man. The biggest thing to me is that the passing attack has looked more live than ever, and there are flaws. We can't ignore them. The running game is so sad. It's just it's nothing to get excited about, man. Exactly like you said. Oh, we're going to get 3 yards right here. Awesome. It is you're saying a single. It's also kind of like a white flag. All right, guys, we're just conceding on this play. We're not actually going to try to do anything dynamic. But I do think it is as simple as they haven't executed in big moments, man. Classic in this game, the final 2 drives, and it's very uncharacteristic at Kansas City, 2 3-and-outs, -3 yards. So they don't execute in the 2 most important drives at the end of the game, and then they have 2 other big, long drives that end up costing them. 16 plays, they end in a field goal, and a 9-play drive where Pat throws a pick. Like, it's damn, man. I hate making this spiel. I do it about the Chiefs every year, and I wanted to bail on the Chiefs earlier this year, and even before this game, I was thinking in my head, I just have such an ingrained level of blind faith with the Kansas City Chiefs in Patrick Mahomes, and I know it's frustrating as a Chiefs fan. I get it. I felt this passionate and angry at the Steelers when they had a Hall of Fame quarterback in Big Ben and they wouldn't execute in the regular season. I get it. When you have an expectation and such a high standard for your football team, it can be infuriating. But I do just have this level of faith with the Chiefs that I wanted to bail on earlier this year. I was wrong. I have been a Chiefs guy every week with Patrick Mahomes, and I would feel foolish betting down the stretch. I want to be clear about something. They're going to drop in my power rankings.
Yeah.
This was a strategic play on my part.
Brilliant.
Look, my track record. Preseason, the Ravens, lost week 1. Week 2, Packers. Next week's, loss versus Cleveland, tie versus Dallas. Week 4, I give it to the Bills. They lose to the Pats and the Falcons. In week 6 through 11, it was a delayed curse. It took me a minute. Ills versus Buffalo and Denver. So the Chiefs are going to have to drop in my power rankings because I got them. I don't know who I'm going to get next time, but I'm going to get somebody. So we'll see. But all in all, yeah, man, I think the Chiefs are going to be fine. I think that I don't really feel any differently about this team.
So I do have a couple concerns that I want to touch on when it relates to, like, the fact that we both had them number 1 in our power rankings, and it was just like, yeah, the Chiefs, guess what? They're playing great football. We have so much confidence in them, the formula that we know they can execute. I do think a couple things have gone a little bit wayward there. What I will say is this, though. I have felt for a while now, since it's been clear that this is the season of chaos and the season of no great teams, that top priority is get to the dance. Get to the playoffs, playing your best football in late December, in January. That is now all that matters for Kansas City, okay? Home field, like, that's gone in all likelihood, barring a crazy anomaly. Shout out Jason Tatum. So you just have to round into form and get there. And that's not a guarantee. So that's where, when you're saying I'm not worried, it's like, I'm worried about that, because that's a challenging spot to put yourself in. But like I said, with the Bills back in 2023, there are these teams that have just been so damn good for so damn long, and I know the level that they can reach, and when you got a superhuman under center, like, I think that they're ultimately going to pull through, and when they get there, I think they're going to be one of the biggest threats in the AFC. That being said, when we think about the formula that has always been so key for the Chiefs, it's not just we have Patrick Mahomes. Like, obviously, that's a massive part of it, but also they have a superstar pass catcher in Travis Kelce. They have a defensive superstar in Chris Jones. They have the best coaching on both sides of the football. None of those other things feel true right now. Like, obviously, Kelce's regression, maybe that's been more than made up for by the progress in the rest of the receiving core. And Kelce was actually good in this game, but we do know that he is far more up and down than ever before. It's not so much that one that I'm worried about. I think the passing attack is great, but Chris Jones has not been the same player this year. Now, actually, he was also pretty good in this game, but overall has been well below his level this season. And the coaching, I don't think, has been the same. Like, Andy Reid, this guy who was once an offensive visionary, doesn't really feel like he's ahead of the curve in that way anymore. I thought the play calling from Kansas City was rather predictable on both sides of the ball. Ironically, we're talking about how the run game for Kansas City is underwhelming, but in this game, I thought they could have done more just straight up under center runs. I thought that those actually went relatively well when they gave the ball to Kareem Hunt, but the run pass balance was crazy, dude. I mean, 48 dropbacks for Patrick Mahomes versus 13 handoffs to Kareem Hunt. Like, I think they could have benefited from a little more balance, and I think that on the other side of the ball, Denver got a beat on what they were doing defensively, and I think that's why the Denver offense improved as this game went along. I thought Sean Payton started drawing up some really nice counters and, like, dudes wide open, right? That wasn't happening in the first half of the game, and then you have some of those explosives in the passing game later. So, again, that advantage of we've got the genius that is Reed, we've got the genius that is Spags.
Yeah, I was going to say
Didn't
Spags,
feel like it was there.
Reed Reed has been underwhelming, but I think Spags has been equally as underwhelming, man. Like, I want to see him in – and I know this was something that Kansas City struggled with last year, too, during the regular season, but their inability to get teams off the field in third down situations is infuriating, man, either be it by busted, blown coverage, and I think the secondary has taken a slight step back over the past couple of years with some of their losses, but more so just – and I don't know if Spags is just playing possum and playing coy before the playoffs, doesn't want to let the cat out of the bag and let you know some of the – exotics that he's breaking out. But like you said, man, it's gut check time, dude. You got to throw the kitchen sink at teams. You got to go balls to the walls. Like, you can't drop any more of these regular season games. You look up next week, you could be 5-6 if you play around with Daniel Jones. And that's just a very precarious situation for Kansas City to be in. And I agree with you, though, man. I do think play calling has been a pretty major component in some of their struggles this year on both sides of the ball.
Well, the third down defense you mentioned, I mean, that's where this game is decided effectively, right? That 3rd and 15 where they just get no pressure. And I do think that was a problem throughout this game, the pass rush just not getting pressure. And maybe they have to be overly reliant on some Spags blitzes because of that. But not a impressive performance from the defense. And then I thought opposite, like, one of the problems of not having a balanced offensive approach in a game like this is that means that Denver can pin their ears back with the best pass rush and the best pass defense in football because they know what you're doing a vast majority of the time. They know that it's being treated as a passing down every time down. And so I thought that the Denver pass rush was able to really get into that offensive backfield of Kansas City a lot, and they started blitzing a lot in the second half. And also, I thought Mahomes just didn't play very well. He had a bad pick in the red zone. On the same drive, he threw what would have been a pick six, if not for an illegal contact called away from the play, which absolutely should have been called. It doesn't matter if it's the receiver he's throwing to or whatever. It's illegal contact. But I don't know that excuses the decision of, I'm going to float this ball directly to a defensive player. Obviously, it ends up being wiped away. It doesn't count. But, like, just two very bad decisions on one drive, even though only one of them actually hurt the team. And just missed on a couple deep shots, threw a couple more near picks that were, like, in Hufanga's hands. Like, at the end of the day, if Mahomes doesn't play up to his potential, this team probably is not going to win a lot of football games against good teams. And like you said, at the end of the day, I mean, you get the ball with 8 minutes left, up a field goal, and you go 3 and out. You get the ball with 4 minutes left in a tie ball game, you go 3 and out. Like, that's really bad. That's really bad from Kansas City. So they are now in a huge prove-it spot. I'm not going to do a sky is falling panic thing with them because I do believe, as so many things indicate, they are as good, if not a better football team than last year. The reality is, it's not just luck that has gone against them. I think also the clutch execution is part of it, right? It's not like one-score games are a literal coin flip. There is certainly some variance that's going to be had there. That's why you don't want to be living in one-score games every week. But, first of all, they have more wins in two-score games this year than they did in all of last year. So they actually have had some of those blowout wins that they didn't at all. But, yeah, like, that's a spot where last year you think, okay, it's a really close game, but Patrick Mahomes is the guy who you trust to come through. That's how I would always view those situations. And he was not the guy who came through in this one, Logan. It was Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos. Now, if there's a team that we have been lower on than the consensus this year, it is Denver. There's no doubt about that. How moved are you by this? Where are you at with the Broncos now?
Boners rise. Dude, I think they're the Super Bowl front runner. I think they're going to win the Super Bowl this year. They're the front runner for the AFC West. They're 9-2. I think they're going to be the number 1 seed. Bo Nix is the best quarterback in the NFL. And I don't know if you noticed this. Dude, they won this game without Pat Surtain, J.K. Dobbins, and Alex Singleton. That's pretty big to me. Dobbins is on IR. I don't know if he's going to return the rest of this season, but R.J. Harvey is a beast. I think the Broncos are the best team in the NFL, Carson. I'm moved.
Okay, dude. I don't think everybody's going to get that you're doing a bit. There are people who genuinely believe that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I have to give credit that Denver has been, and I got to give credit to Bo here. Like, Denver has been really good in big moments this year. In the fourth quarter, when they have needed a big drive, defensively, offensively, they have been big time on both sides of the ball. This team is super clutch. I do think they have the best defense in football. The immense amount of pressure that they can exert on the opposing quarterback. Again, their ability to win this game down key personnel was super impressive to me, and they have got big wins against a lot of good teams this year.
Well, I don't know about a lot, but great wins over Philly and Kansas City.
I'm impressed with this defense, man. I don't have a lot of good things to say about Bo, but damn, man, Bo's executed in some big spots this year. I can't deny that. I can be critical about his consistency and maybe his play through quarters 1 through 3. When the chips have been down, the boner has rised. In the big moments, he's got it up.
Beautifully said, Logan. This defense is absolutely insane. Like, out of this world good, dude. They are number 1 in yards per pass attempt allowed. They are number 1 in yards per rush allowed. They are second in points per drive allowed. They are the number 1 third down defense. They are the number 1 red zone defense. They are number 1 in quarterback pressure rate. They are number 1 in sacks by so far, Logan. They have 49. Nobody else has more than 34. That is what continues to move me with Denver. Or I guess I should say move me this past week. Like, they might be an all-time great defense. That is how dominant they have been on that side of the football. I've talked about, I don't know if they're the best defense or if it's Houston. I think Houston is amazing too, but I think I have to give that nod to Denver at this point. That puts them in a spot where they only needed 21 points to beat Philly. They only needed 22 points to beat the Chiefs, and their defense kept getting off the field and getting them another chance with the football. Like, that is a testament to how great that unit truly is. What does not change, in my perspective whatsoever, is my feelings about the offense, dude. The offense is genuinely bad, and that's the funniest thing about, like, football discourse, right? You get a win, and all of a sudden it becomes all about the quarterback. I do want to be clear. I actually thought Bo played pretty well in this game. I thought that he did enough, no turnovers. That 3rd and 15 throw on the run, poor defense by Kansas City, getting no pressure whatsoever. You can't cover for that long. But that was a really nice throw, nevertheless. And the dagger ball to Franklin, I thought that he placed really well, understanding that he had the leverage to get back inside. DB didn't have visibility of that ball. That was a really good throw. Overall, though, this team is 26th in yards per drive. They're 23rd in points per drive. Bo Nix is still not good. He is very inaccurate. He's 28th out of 34 qualified quarterbacks in completion percentage over expected. He's 28th of all qualified quarterbacks in yards per pass attempt. There are long stretches in all of these games where he cannot move the ball downfield at all. Denver is not moving the ball downfield at all. That isn't changing. So we've just seen so much of this offense being bad that even though Bo played better in this game, and this is a great win. This is a great win. Let's be very clear about that. I do still feel, though, that I can't view a team that is this bad offensively as a legitimate contender. Like, maybe they can be the 2015 Broncos reincarnated, right? The only team that has executed that formula in recent memory that we were talking about of being great defense, bad offense, still winning the Super Bowl. That's just not something that I can buy into through a playoff run in 2025 in the AFC. Even if they're not having their best regular seasons, you're going to have to go head-to-head and beat the Kansas City Chiefs now in a playoff setting where Patrick Mahomes has consistently been at his best and the offense has been at their best. You're probably going to have to do that to the Buffalo Bills or maybe the Baltimore Ravens. Like, these superhuman quarterbacks and these high-powered offenses, I do believe in the most. And you can look at a team like Philly last year and say, hold on, but they won on the back of defense. They did. Their offense was also really good when it mattered, though. They hung 55 on Washington. They hung 40 on Kansas City. Like, they had an explosiveness there that Denver just doesn't have, flat out. Like, they beat the Texans scoring 18. They beat the Jets scoring 13. So many of these games they are eking out, and it's just
beat the Raiders dropping 10, bro.
Beat the Raiders scoring 10. It's like their defense gets them so many chances, but I do think they are going to be in a spot where an opposing offense is going to be able to put up enough points. And maybe it's not in the first round of the playoffs, but it's going to happen at some point. I can't bet on an offense this limited to win it all. That being said, I'm impressed by Denver. As somebody who has been the ultimate Denver skeptic, like, I think the defense is even better than I expected, and I said that they would be the best defense in football. This is a really good win. I talked about them sort of limping past these shitty teams, and now they went out there and they beat a good football team, a really good football team. Like, that means something, but even if you go back through all my Denver skepticism, never have I said Denver is going to miss the playoffs. Never had I said Denver is not going to win a lot of regular season games. I've specifically said they have. I didn't predict them to be 9-2. But I have said they're going to win double-digit games because that's what this formula does for you. When you're a dominant defense, you can rely on that more in the regular season than you can in the playoffs. The track record on that is clear throughout history. I did a whole video on this. If you're skeptical of the science, I literally dug into the numbers throughout recent NFL and NBA history to see, okay, does defense actually win championships like Old Bear Bryant said, or is it offense? It's offense, man. The extent to which offenses elevate in the playoffs, in the NFL especially, is just ridiculous. Like, in a small sample size, it needs to be your offense that elevates, because ultimately, as important and as great as defense is, the best offenses can reach a level where even the best defenses can't stop them. And you have to be able to compete. Again, it's not going to be every game. You have to win 3 straight. You have to win 4 straight against really good teams, against probably really good offenses. And the course of modern NFL history tells us there is a level of offensive production and talent that is required there that I just don't think that Denver has.
That being said, I agree with you. I do want to give them props. Carson, number 1 third down defense in the NFL, 28.9%. I just looked through, since they have percentages for every team, that's dating back to 2003. Only 3 defenses since 2003 have had a better third down percentage than Denver this year. That's 2019 Patriots, the 2017 Vikings, and the 2003 Titans.
I'll give you one more, Logan. They are allowing the fewest yards per play since the 2015 Broncos. Like, it's an amazing defense. And, like, maybe that's good enough. I just don't think so. I think offense matters too much in today's NFL when we're talking about them winning the Super Bowl. But again, I think that they're better than I've given them credit for. You know, I don't think that they're a pushover when you get to a playoff setting, because look at what this defense just did to Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. We're talking about that as the measuring stick. Well, they just beat them. Again, I do think it's a little bit different in the playoffs and when you have to do it against probably multiple elite quarterbacks consecutively. But this is a great win for Denver. They are now in a very good position to win this division. I personally don't think they're going to get the 1 seed just because they do have remaining games against Green Bay, Jacksonville, who's good enough to beat them potentially, at Kansas City, and the Chargers. And you compare that to the Patriots schedule. Patriots schedule is a fair bit easier. I mean, they still have the Ravens and Bills, but every other game on their schedule is just a pushover kind of opponent. But they are nevertheless in a very good spot in the standings. And we'll see, Logan. We'll see if they can ultimately prove me wrong, prove us wrong. I will say also, overcoming 150 penalty yards, not easily done.
Oh, yeah. I got one more stat for you on this Denver defense. Not only is that true about their third down percentage, I think they also have the 3rd best red zone percentage defensively. Excuse me, 4th best. We have some great defenses here. The 05 Bears, the 06 Ravens, the 07 Ravens, and the 2015, or their top 5, excuse me. But still, top 5 in defensive red zone percentage and top 5 in third down percentage, since we have numbers on all 32 teams. Like, I just want to emphasize, like, how great. And aren't they on pace for the most sacks in a single?
Yeah.
Is that still true in a single season? Like,
I think
that is true. The kind of that's just historic. That's historic stuff that Denver's defense is doing right now.
It is. That's what I think I have undersold. Not the offense. I'm still totally worried about the offense. The defense not just being great, but like potentially being an actual all-time unit, which does change the calculus a little bit. But I think that we've said enough about the Broncos and where we land with them. What's your next big takeaway from this past week, Logan?
You mentioned this briefly, Carson, when you were talking about the luxury that the Ravens have with the tail end of their schedule, and we've talked about this throughout the season. I think my Pittsburgh Steelers are probably cooked, and I am ready to push my chips into the table and say that we are going to win or lose the AFC North, and I think the Ravens are going to take it. Rodgers now has a small bone break in his left wrist. He reportedly wants to play versus Chicago. Chicago fans are saying he's ducking the heat. He's scared of the Bears. He doesn't want this work from Caleb Williams. I think Pittsburgh's probably done. And just looking at I've made this take in the previous couple of weeks, but I really think if you look at the type of teams that we are playing and how they win games, I only really think the Steelers have one kind of gimme game remaining. And so I think they'll probably win at least 2 to 3, some 2 games by voodoo magic. I think they'll beat Cleveland just by the fact that Cleveland's not very good. But, Carson, I'm specifically scared about the kind of offenses that Pittsburgh is going to play down the next stretch of games. For the Ravens, I think they're probably going to win out or close to it again. They've got the Jets, Bengals twice, Steelers twice, and then their 2 tough games are the Patriots and Packers. The Steelers have the Bears, the Bills, the Dolphins, the Lions, the Ravens twice, and the Browns once. And I can go one by one with these teams. Buffalo, it's pretty simple. I think this offensive line is going to move the Steelers around. I think James Cook is going to have a field day on the ground, and Josh is just going to torch them. The Dolphins still have too much speed to me. I think this is a very old defense, and if Achane and Waddle and they can get out into space against this team, I think they could have a field day against this old Steelers defense. And I know that Steelers fans are probably high and delirious a little bit after the Bengals win, and I get it. How did we win differently from any of the other games that we have won this year? The Steelers won on the back of big turnover swing plays. I don't like winning on that formula. That is my fundamental issue with this team is I don't like winning on big swing plays. I like a level of consistency, and I feel like they're too dependent on it. Also, real quick, before I get into the schematics of the other schedule parts of the Steelers season and why I think they shouldn't be favored in a lot of these games, I think there is a fundamental misunderstanding of how to get the best use out of some of the personnel on this Steelers team. Nick Herbig still doesn't play enough for me defensively. I'd like to see Jack Sawyer get some more burn out there defensively. Real quick, I will give a shout-out to Kyle Duggar. I think Kyle Duggar's really good. I want to see him get more PT. That guy is
great little value pickup.
Right, dude. He is a game-changer defensively. So for the Pats to just give him up, thank y'all. Shout-out New England. I think he's an actual stud for us. But offensively, Carson, you look at all the analytics on Jaylen Warren, Kenneth Gainwell should not be getting this much PT. And I like Kenny Gainwell. He had a good game.
You say it's coming off of his career game.
Had a couple of big plays receiving-wise. I just mean situationally, some of the times that they utilize him in short yardage situations, or I just still don't think they use 2 guys enough. I still don't think they use Jaylen Warren enough. And you look at it, and he is just better down to down than some of the best running backs in football. Great pass pro, hands, running the football between the tackles. He's just all around great. And then the other guy is Darnell Washington. And if you look at, shout out Brooke Pryor, great beat reporter for the Steelers. She consistently retweets and tweets these things out. The Steelers are undefeated when Darnell Washington plays X number of snaps and gets onto the field. He is a game changer to me. Now, I will say there is some noise in a stat like that because I do think that plays into the fact that Darnell is going to play more into 13 personnel packages, and normally you're going to play the Steelers play more 13 personnel than any other team in the NFL, but you're also going to play 13 personnel more when you're leading in football games and running the ball more. So there's a little noise in that stat, but I do think it also speaks to the fact that Darnell is a weapon, and the Steelers need to utilize him and Jaylen. Those are my gripes I want to get out from the Bengals game. Anyway, back to the bigger tape. Then we got the Lions, and the Lions are fast, and they're explosive, and they're dynamic offensively, and the Ravens. And we've owned Lamar, and I think the Steelers can gimmick up a good scheme, but that's going to be a close game. And the Ravens are more talented than us, quite frankly. I'm just feeling like, damn, dude, Rodgers could miss a couple weeks, could miss this week against Chicago. Chicago has been on a heater. I think we're going to lose this week against them. Monangai is a real difference maker. They've been really able to run the ball recently. Caleb is dynamic. Like, I think 9-8 is just staring us in the face, man. I'm nervous. Yeah. I was really confident earlier in this year. I think the Steelers pissed away their margin in a couple of ugly games, and I think the Ravens are going to come and get us, man. This isn't different from any of the other takes that I've had on Pittsburgh. I've slowly been moving over to this side of the fence, but I'm there, man. I gotta. You were right, Carson. I've given you shit throughout the year about this take, but I think you're right, bro.
Well, thank you, Logan. My philosophy has been learn to sit back and observe. Not everything needs a reaction. When the Ravens dropped to 1-5, and I said, Logan, they can still easily win this division.
The Lion does not concern himself with the current records.
No, he does not. Although I do concern myself with your opinion, Logan, and you are not a sheep. But, yeah, I think the Ravens are going to win the division. Like, they're just taking care of business. And by the way, they haven't looked great, but they're just better than Pittsburgh, and they have a better schedule.
The Browns game was close, but, like, I thought they had a couple of the Keaton Mitchell luck. Pick six, that's not on Lamar. That's just kind of a fluke turnover. Like, I thought there were a few big swing plays that made that game a little closer than it should have been.
Regardless, all that really matters right now is that they're getting W's on their record, and now they've got the Jets.
Tyler
and then they've
Huntley
got the Bengals.
Saved the season, man. Pro Bowl quarterback Tyler Huntley.
Huge win over the Bears, and he remains the only quarterback to beat the Bears in the last 8 weeks now. So shout out to Snoop Huntley. But, yeah, I just think this offense is really explosive at full strength. I think the defense is talented enough to be pretty solid, and I think that the Ravens are just a better football team than the Steelers, so I agree with this. I think that they are going to surge back, and I don't really have anything to add because that's how I have felt forever. Honestly, it's just interesting that the Ravens got off to the terrible start that they did because, it makes for a little drama, a fun little storyline. But I think that they are totally in position to be back in the playoffs again. And like I said, what's most important is just that you hit your stride in that moment. I want to talk about a game between two teams that are both going to be in the playoffs almost certainly. Seahawks-Rams. This was one of the most anticipated matchups of the week. We both had these teams in our 2 and 3 spots. We had the order flipped, I believe, in our contender rankings, but thought they were both major contenders. And this was a really interesting football game. It's a close win for LA. What stands out to me here is just how baffling the floor to ceiling difference is for Sam Darnold. Like we were talking about earlier, I mean, he is great most of the time. And when he sucks, he really sucks. I saw a great stat on the broadcast. Darnold is 21-4 versus everybody else since the start of last season. He is 0-3 versus the Rams. They have had his number. I think that they check the necessary boxes to rattle him, especially when it comes to just elite pass rush getting a shit ton of pressure. But he came into this game leading the NFL in like most passing metrics. I mean, he was averaging like 9.6 yards per attempt. He had like a 115 passer rating. He was in the MVP conversation. Then he throws 4 picks in this one, all of them bad. First one, horrible decision, weak ball, thrown off his back foot. That gets returned almost for a pick 6 inside the Seattle 5. The second one, another weak ball underthrown on an outbreaking route as he was getting hit. Third pick, underthrown into double coverage. Fourth pick, he attempts a jump pass. That's underthrown again into traffic, easily undercut. Like he was just forcing it under pressure over and over, and he didn't have like the sort of crazy freak physical tools that he would have needed to make some of these throws that he was trying. And so he just totally melted down. And like, I've been so impressed by Darnold this year. I have thought that Darnold like has legitimately improved from last season when it comes to getting the ball out more quickly, making quicker decisions, totally limiting the sacks that he was taking, which was such a big problem for him last year. Like he improved upon the leap from last season. And yet you wonder, like, can you ever get rid of that concern that at some point the bottom is going to fall out? We were just talking about how much we trust Sam Darnold this past week. And it was like, okay, where is he on the, I think it was Goff, right? To Stafford scale. And you were saying he's pretty much there with Goff. And I was like, he's closer to Goff on that scale for me. But he's like closer to the middle. You know, he's obviously not a Stafford in terms of the faith, but the guy just been playing so well. He's been playing like a clear top 10 quarterback. And now it's kind of like, yeah, when I think about both Detroit and Seattle, I'm going to think about a team that checks a lot of boxes, has a lot of talent, and has quarterbacks who most of the time play pretty damn well, but also both have their limitations when it comes to, at times, really questionable decision-making, kind of melting down under pressure. And although Darnold can move more than Goff for sure, like, is not even close, again, you saw maybe the downside to him trying to create a little bit too much in these games while not being one of those like actual A-plus creators. That game, the fact that that is still a possibility for Darnold is enough to convince me that I would take the Rams over the Seahawks. At the same time, the counterpoint would be 4 picks from Darnold. This was a 2-point game. Like, this was 21-19, and that's where I think...
Where if you got another 30 seconds on the clock, maybe you could get, into field goal range to win it. Yeah.
That's where I have to give so much credit to the Seahawks defense, dude. They held LA to 2 of 11 on third down, 249 total yards of offense, 5 yards per play, 12 first downs. I mean, they were just repeatedly put in shitty spots, and to only hold them to 21 points, a really good Rams offense, like, I think is a testament to the fact that this is absolutely one of the top 5 defenses in football. We've been talking about some of the best. Denver, Houston, Philly is now looking like they're in that form. But Seattle has been as consistent as pretty much anybody this year, and they just check so many boxes in terms of elite defense versus the pass versus the run. They've had a really big-time pass rush. They've got an elite secondary. And so you think, okay, well, if we get an average Darnold game, that's enough for Seattle to win this one. But again, when I think about playoff formulas, when I think about contending upside, it's not all about one game. It's about your viability through 3 or 4 games, which means if you have a major red flag, I believe at some point that is going to come back to bite you, especially if that major red flag is in any way quarterback play. And it bums me to say this because Darnold has been so good this year, but like, I don't know how you cannot be deeply concerned after a performance like this. And I will never, ever be worried about Matt Stafford having a game like this. Now your MVP frontrunner in terms of betting odds, Matt Stafford, who's got, I think, 27 touchdowns to 2 picks. I think he's hit 2013 Nick Foles. Like, there's just a gap there, and that gap means something, even though I think both of these defenses are really good. Seattle's is even better. I trust the Rams offense more because I trust the Rams quarterback a lot more.
I think that's right. I think I'm there with you, and I ranked the Seahawks above the Rams. The difference for me, and I probably should have thought about it that way because I definitely trust Stafford more. My difference was the defense and the secondary play. Like, I went with Seattle because I thought there was a pretty big gap between the faith that I have in Seattle's secondary versus Los Angeles's, and I do think that Darnold plays better. I think these teams are still very close.
They are, for sure.
I'm definitely more aligned with where you are to where I was coming into this week. But I think you do have to be encouraged by the play of Seattle's defense. And the most interesting thing about Seattle's defense to me, especially recently, but this has been true throughout the season, is the fact that they can play so small, but that they're still so great against the run. Mm-hmm. Seattle has one of the highest light box rates in the NFL, the 4th highest. They also have the highest sub-package rate, which means that they're playing with an extra defensive back. That's ridiculous to consider. Again, so that makes sense that they're great against the pass. They're 3rd against the pass this year, but they're also 5th against the run. Like, that just speaks to how good this defensive front and these linebackers are at really stuffing the run at the point of attack, and how good these secondary guys are at tackling. Like, that's something that's super impressive to me, because you look at some of these other teams that run a lot of this, like they've struggled against the run, like the Bills are another one of these teams that are really high against it. Not to just dunk on you guys.
Well, that's literally always been the case, though. We were actually ahead of the curve when it comes to playing a shit ton of nickel and dime, and it has always come at the cost of us being small and not able to stop the run.
It's super impressive about this defense that they're capable of that. And I still really like Seattle. They're a lot damn better than I thought. Darnold was our still the reason. I don't want to beat a drum, but it's kind of always how we felt about Darnold and Goff as quarterbacks. I feel like we've been saying this about them for 2 to 3 years now with this team. So I don't want to beat a dead horse when we're saying that, but it is still the fundamental concern when it comes to Seattle in a big game. And can you trust them? Sometimes football games are just simply going to come down to that. And I do think that was the difference in this one.
It's just such a bummer, because I feel like within each of the last 2 seasons, when I have gotten to the point where I'm highest on Darnold, and he's been playing his best football, that's when this happens. Yeah, seriously. But this year hurts more, just because I think he's been asked to do more. He's been asked to carry this offense more. He's improved upon so many of his flaws last year he had, until this game when the bottom just totally fell out. But that's a really interesting point that you bring up about Seattle defending the run so well, even when they're in nickel a lot and in dime sometimes, and in these smaller groups. I saw another great stat from Ben Solak, shout out to him for the second time on this podcast, about how the Rams were playing a shit ton of dime in this game on early downs. And we've talked about how Seattle has been able to kill people in the passing game because they're so good at throwing out of these heavy personnel groups, where they'll have 2 tight ends out there, and yet they are just a great passing attack. It's not actually that they're super effective running out of those looks, but they can create a mismatch because you come out there and you match personnel, and now you're too slow to guard what is ultimately a pass-first attack, and they've been able to exploit that a lot. And the Rams kind of said, okay, we know that you're actually not very good at running the football. We know that you're trying to get us in these looks so you can beat us through the air. We want to have the best personnel to match up in coverage, and I think that's part of where you saw Seattle not having the same openings in the passing game that they're used to, not having the same separation. And Seattle did a similar thing on the opposite side, right? What's been the revelation of the Rams season midway through? They've started going to a shit ton of these 3 tight end looks, and they've been killing people. And Seattle said, we are not going to match personnel. We want to be best set up to cover in the passing game. And they did a
renaissance
great job.
Almost, man. It makes me hype, dude.
Yeah.
I like seeing coordinators get creative. It's really interesting, those little strategy things. I think we've seen that league-wide. Like the Steelers have done that a ton this year with their – it's hard. It's a mismatch.
Yeah.
If you've got tight ends that can do both, that can really run, protect, and get out in space, they're just really valuable guys to have on the team if they're, if they're good at doing both. That goes for wideouts, too.
Here.
I love it,
tight end
man.
revolution is here, man. It is here. And
Tyler Warren
very
started
fun.
it, man. He started it all.
I don't know about that, but it's here, regardless of who started it. So, yeah, like you're saying, both of these teams are really, really good. None of that changes here. It's just I now have a bigger concern with Seattle than I do anything with the Rams. I also do want to shout out, I saw a stat. Jared Verse and Byron Young have both generated 7 pressures this year that led directly to turnovers. That's the most in the NFL. That's 2 LA Rams for you. So that's what we talk about, Logan.
Sorry,
pressure
that's
bust pipes.
7 individually, both of them?
7 each.
Wow.
So, these are the consequences of pressure, right? It's not always sacks. It's you speed a guy up, you force him to make a mistake, to make a questionable decision, and the Rams have been excellent at forcing turnovers this year. They're 2nd in takeaways, and they're 7th in passing yards per attempt allowed. They're 7th in rushing yards per attempt allowed. They're a really elite defense, too. They're not quite Seattle there, but they're a really great defense. And they do have the offense that I trust more because they have the GOAT, Matt Stafford, the best ever football player who is dead. Very Halloween-y of him. All right, Logan, give me another big takeaway. What you got?
Well, we were just talking about Sam Darnold. I'm going to talk about the guy that they replaced him with. Oh, boy. The Minnesota Vikings have got to figure out what to do with J.J. McCarthy, man. They've got to pivot off this guy. Now, I will give McCarthy a slight bit of grace. The Chicago game, and I want to be very selective with my words here, was a little better than the stat line suggests. McCarthy was really, really bad, but I will say I think Minnesota, I think the receivers had 5 or 6 drops. Like, there were some bad drops in this game. I think against the not against the Packers. I think the Packers receivers also struggled with some drops and stuff this week. Teams will have it. So I think sometimes stat lines can be deceiving. That being said, McCarthy still stinks. And through 5 games, I'm just ready to bail on him, man. I am. Hear me out. I'm traditionally a guy. We always talk about it. The old quote. I love it, man. Bill Walsh. You got to give a guy 24 games, dude. Got to give him a year and a half. See what you got in a guy. I know what we got in J.J. McCarthy. There's a couple quarterbacks right now, and I'll get to this guy later. Like Dylan Gabriel. I've just seen enough with some guys, man. And I didn't like J.J. as a prospect. I still really don't like him as a player. I really don't like the fact that he talks about him in the third person like he's some sort of superhero or a guy wearing a mask or a costume. Mm-hmm. His stats are bad. 190 yards per game. That's total. That's not just passing. 52.9% completion. He's got 8 TDs to 9 turnovers this year. There's a few really major concerns. The biggest one to me is the fact that I just don't think he's really that talented. There's no skill that pops off with him. I like his legs the most, and yet they're not like an A1 kind of trait. The biggest thing with the talent is that there's a significant lack of arm talent. I don't really see the arm ability there with JJ. This is a guy that likes to push the ball downfield, but he doesn't really have a particularly live or accurate arm. Right now, he is 44.5% in terms of on-target percentage. That is dead last among 35 qualified quarterbacks. Carson, how much do you think that's below league average?
Dude, 44.5% on. I'm going to say that's 25% below league average.
That's exactly right. That is exactly right, Carson.
Ooh, I like
he
that.
Is inaccurate. He is inconsistent, and he's dead last among qualified quarterbacks in EPA per play. And so it is just this double whammy that you're getting here with JJ, where I think he is just very untalented, but I also think he has this reckless abandonment with the ball. He's number 1 in terms, I think, of yards per pass attempt. The guy is just willing to throw caution with the wind at any given moment and just huck the ball into harm's way. Yeah.
Like air yards attempted?
That's what I was
going to say. I think he is the opposite of number 1 in yards per pass attempt or close to it.
He's also just really sped up and uncomfortable. He never looks... And I do want to give him a little bit of grace with this part, too. Minnesota has the 3rd highest pressure rate in the NFL. Carson Wentz, when he was under center, was top 5. I do think he is very sped up. He's got some great pass catchers, but the protection has not been great either. That's the only bit of grace I'll give JJ. But I think you see it in terms of the morale on the sideline, Carson. A quarterback this bad can completely wreck a team's morale in their season. This Minnesota offense looks like they have had their heart taken out of their chest. They are completely lifeless and fed up. I feel bad for Justin Jefferson. I feel bad for Aaron Jones. They're frustrated. They're fed up, man. Like, in my conclusion, because I think this year is done for Minnesota, and I've been done with this year for Minnesota. Maybe they eke out a couple of other wins off the back of their defense this year and JJ doing enough. But they're not making the playoffs. This team is not a legitimate threat no matter how talented they are defensively or how well coached they are. And they've had some offensive line injuries that have definitely set them back as well. But the bottom line with Minnesota, and we can always write it back to the quarterback, but he can't be your guy next season. And it sucks because you spent a first-round pick on the guy. And it is it is the toughest pill to swallow in sports. But guess what? The Colts did it. And they got off of a guy that they invested in very heavily with the 4th pick in the draft. And they took a guy that was on your practice squad and was backing up for you next year, and they figured it out. And so what I'm saying is it sucks that you spent the first-round pick and you whiffed. But the beauty in it is that there is sometimes a solution. And if you can find that budget option bargain guy, I don't know who it is because I was wrong. I wouldn't appoint. I would never in my life, if I was a talent evaluator, would I have gone in the offseason, Daniel Jones. That's my guy. But what I am saying is that there is always a guy that you can take a project on, that if you can find that diamond in the rough and really tailor him to your system, I think you can do it. The bottom line, though, is it's not Wentz, it's not McCarthy, and unfortunately this offseason, you are going to have to go through the arduous task of figuring out who that quarterback is, who can give you that life next season and make you competitive, because I am still a believer that Minnesota is not that far away from being a contender. You have got a great coaching staff. I think at your full strength, you've got a really good offensive line, and you've got an elite defense. And so you've got all that going for you. But you do still have to find the quarterback, and I don't think it's 9. I think 9 is chopped.
No, it's not 9, dude. And what I've been saying since the start, I mean, I remember specifically after week 2, I said this, like, what's the trait, man? Because last week I tried to be nice, and I said, guys, J.J. McCarthy is absolutely horrible right now. That's not up for debate. If you're a Vikings fan and you want to say, oh, but he can be good, okay, I don't think that. But that's a different thing. You can think that. What we have to acknowledge is that right now this guy is literally league worst at, like, everything at the quarterback position. And along with all the stats that you read off, I will add that he is dead last out of 38 guys with at least 100 pass attempts in passer rating. 61 passer rating. Dead last by far there. Dead last by far in completion percentage. And he is actually 35th out of 38 in yards per pass attempt. So just horrific quarterback play. He is putting up worse than Anthony Richardson numbers with none of the upside. Like, that's what's been so funny. Well, obviously, it's always the funniest thing in the world when fan base is trying to pull out, like, the Josh Allen stats from his first few starts, and they're like, oh, this is how he started, and look at who he became. And it's like, I'm going to advise everybody to never bet on, like, the greatest development trajectory in NFL history, maybe in sports history, just an incredible outlier, just because something has happened once. If something's happened once, and there's only one specific example you look at, that means you should not bank on it happening again. But even more so than that, you should never point to Josh Allen as the example, even if you are an Anthony Richardson. But in that case, at least you're talking about freak athlete, crazy mover, elite arm talent, huge size and frame. Again, there is physical upside there that, yes, Josh grew into as he also refined everything else. J.J. McCarthy has none of the upside. He doesn't have anything close to like a blue chip trait. He doesn't have anything that makes me think, oh yeah, that's what's going to make him a good starter down the line. He is physically below average in terms of his gifts. When you're talking about athleticism, he does move pretty well, but when it comes to arm talent, size, it's like, meh, not great. And boy, he is just frenetic back there in the worst way. He is like so jittery and horribly inaccurate. The least accurate quarterback who I have watched this year. Just like straight up blowing so many
like, dude,
throws.
I mean, he legitimately, and look, man, I root for guys to be successful. Like, he does not look like an NFL quarterback. Like, he is the time, and it's weird, man. Like, it's timing, it's the actual ball play, it's all of it.
Decision making.
Yeah, it's literally everything
Pocket
about
presence. It's everything about a quarterback. Everything about a quarterback is bad with J.J. McCarthy without that light at the end of the tunnel, without, oh, this is what you guys aren't seeing yet because this is going to be great down the line. No, there's nothing there. He's just horrible. And it's so disappointing. Look, we talk about this every week, but like, it is crazy how bad he is.
It's also kind of hard not to geek on him when like he is putting this kind of product on the field, and then in the locker room he's giving you this.
Yeah, he's a caricature. He's a caricature of a human being. He's a ridiculous human being. And that's what I was saying last week. Like, the only good things anybody ever has to say about J.J. McCarthy is that he's a weird guy. Like, those are all the anecdotes. That's what's supposed to get you excited. Well, how about you fucking complete a routine pass, man?
Nightmare, dude. The Vikings have the nightmare blunt rotation of quarterbacks. Carson Wentz and J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah, not a couple dudes who I want to hang out with. Not a couple dudes I'd like to sit back and crack open some brews with. What makes this the most disappointing, not to beat a dead horse, but it is the state of this roster on both sides of the ball. Elite defense, elite weapons, and one of the brilliant offensive minds in the NFL. KOC has done so much to elevate offenses. Look at what he got out of Sam Darnold last year, just a total renaissance. They bet on this kid. It was a horrible, horrible bet. And the fact that he is failing in these circumstances, to me, even though the protection hasn't been good like you're saying, but with the offensive mind that he has and with the weapons that he has in the passing game, and he's not even a rookie. You know, we can call him a de facto rookie, and he's still young, but this is his second year as an NFL quarterback, right? He's had a year to learn the mental side of the game and has mentally been horrific.
The biggest thing about McCarthy as a prospect, and I think this is the most overstated quality, is the fact that he was a winner. Well, it's like, by that logic, let me draft Greg McElroy in the first round. You know what I mean? Let's get A.J. McCarron. Like, oh, yeah, Taj Boyd's a real great. You know what I mean? Like, I have never subscribed to that kind of thinking, and I just won't, you know?
You can in college football. I mean, certain teams are just stacked beyond belief.
Exactly, man. I think it is so dumb. And
it's like, you can't point to this sort of ambiguous leadership quality. I'm not saying that the value of that doesn't exist. Nobody respects a leader who sucks, right? Like, that has to be lower down on the priority list after are you actually good at football.
At this point, when people go, oh, yeah, you know, Russ could step into a locker room and lead, it's like, okay, well, when he's winning games, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And when he is shitting his pants, the whole locker room turns on him because he can't hack it. And that is the ripple effect that I worry about with Minnesota and why they need to get this thing buttoned up. Because Justin Jefferson is frustrated, and look, I understand it, right? Jed is he's an icon and a star in Minnesota, but just like we're seeing with like A.J. Brown, man, I think it is very quickly that a relationship like that can turn sour, especially when you have a guy like that talented. I mean, dude, it's the easiest job in football. Get Justin Jefferson the ball. Like,
it's brutal.
Nick Mullins was putting up 93 passing yards a game or something like that with Jefferson. Maybe it was even more than that. Like, if you can't do it with Jettas, man, I just don't think you can do it with anybody. And I just don't want them to keep rocking with McCarthy or try to, again, the sunken cost fallacy when you try to put more into him because you're embarrassed that you invested a first-round pick in this guy. I think you can make this situation worse by dumping more assets into him. And so I think the best course of action for Minnesota, for this offense, for Jefferson, for everybody, is to just cut your ties.
I totally agree. I mean, you are a great organization right now. You're one of the best coach teams. You are a really talented football team. You made one colossal fuck up, and now you just have to accept that you did that. I mean, the fact that it cost you Sam Darnold in this room, that it cost you Daniel Jones, that is brutal, but there's no going back on that. And I think with the context of the roster that you do have, and with KOC being your offensive mind, you have to trust your ability to elevate somebody else because JJ is so bad that he's beyond saving. Now, you're not going to cut him, but he'll be your backup. He'll be your backup for the next 2 years of his rookie contract, and then I think that'll be it
for him. It'll be, one, like a punishment, but also like what he needs right now because he's not a starter. But also, I think it's what he needs. And I'll use an example. And obviously they weren't drafted at the same time. A guy like, because McCarthy's a first-round pick, this guy was in the fourth round, Mason Rudolph. I watched 8 games or 9 games of Mason Rudolph one year, and I said, holy shit, this guy is not an NFL quarterback. He's one of the worst QBs I've ever seen. And then Mason sat on the bench for 3 to 4 years. He improved in the darkness. He didn't play. And now he's a backup. And that's where I'm at with a guy like JJ, where I think he needs to sit on the bench. He needs to get better through practice, through preparation, through whatever. And maybe in a couple of years, he's a guy that could come back and come onto the field and show that he could be a backup or be a capable quarterback. Yeah. I don't even think he's that right now. And that is where he needs to get, because he is not an NFL caliber QB right now, and he is a detriment to the Minnesota Vikings.
Defense, man, they're still 6th in yards per drive allowed. They're 8th in points per drive allowed, but the offense has gone from a top 10 unit, a top 8 passing attack in terms of efficiency, to 26th overall this year in passing net yards per attempt, 26th overall in points per drive, bottom 4 in yards per drive, just like a total disaster on that front. And that's what's costing them this season, where they should be a really good football team. But turns out the quarterback position matters a lot. And they missed big time. And if you think all of this is too final with JJ, I don't. Like, I think some guys are so bad that you can tell. And again, if there isn't that upside for development, what are you even banking on? What are you even doing sticking around? Like, I'm not saying he can't get better from here. He can't get so much better, in my opinion, that he is like the guy for you going forward. That being said, you know who's the guy, Logan? Josh Allen, who I got to watch in person this weekend. That's why we're doing this show on a Tuesday morning instead of our usual Sunday night routine. My big takeaway from them putting up 44 and beating the Bucs, a really good and much needed win after a terrible loss last week, is just they let Josh uncork it. They let Josh be Josh this week more than they have in a long time, and I loved it. I thought that was exceptionally effective, and like, they made a couple changes in terms of personnel at receiver this past week. They added McCole Hardman. They brought up Gabe Davis, Bills legend Gabe Davis, and Keon Coleman was benched for this game. He was a healthy scratch because he missed a meeting amid his very, very disappointing sophomore campaign. But with this new group of receivers who they had, Dalton Kincaid also out for this game, Josh was able to put together just a really explosive passing performance. And there's just a couple of throws that he tried. A deep post to McCole Hardman, who didn't see the field that much, but who at least has the kind of speed to take the top off of the defense for one play. McCole Hardman is not good. McCole Hardman even is bad. This team has been so lacking speed, though, that to just have one guy who you can even try that throw to, I thought that was encouraging. And like overall, just launching balls downfield. I mean, a huge completion out of structure to Tyrell Shaver's 43-yard touchdown, which was a ridiculous play. But they were also really involving the running backs as pass catchers. A screen to Ty Johnson went for a long touchdown. A beautiful wheel route to James Cook was another touchdown. And I really liked the design on both those plays. They both had like this creative return motion from a receiver. So the defense was occupied with another guy in motion, and then they were able to kind of slip it in underneath to Ty on the screen and then go over top to James Cook on the wheel. Really nice play designs on both of those. But honestly, I'm just at a point where I think I'd rather have Gabe Davis and Tyrell Shavers on the field than Keon Coleman. Like, Keon was punished here because of a lack of seriousness in terms of his approach to his team responsibilities, preparation, that stuff. But in terms of his actual football skill set, like, he's basically the worst wide receiver in the NFL when it comes to separating. And I also don't think that he has the feel of those two guys, and certainly the synergy with Josh. Gabe Davis, Logan, I have said many a critical word about in the past, but what I will say is expectations are everything. If you're trying to tell me, oh, Gabe Davis is a good number 2 receiver in the NFL, Gabe Davis is somebody who's worth paying $20 million, I say, you're out of your goddamn mind. When you get to a spot where it's like, hey, Gabe, we're elevating you from the practice squad. Can you come in and just make a couple plays for us in a game? Then I feel differently. And I thought that he played a good game. And I thought that Josh really trusted him.
Tyrell Shavers.
I am.
I think he should get some more PT, man. He's dynamic.
I'm saying I think both of them should probably play more than Keon. I just don't know what Keon is doing out there when his only value is to be a contested catch 50-50 ball guy. And Josh just doesn't really like trying those throws, understandably so, because that's a pretty low percentage option within the scope of our offense.
Was Keon basically the swap that you guys got back for Diggs?
No. I mean, we traded back. The Chiefs got Worthy, and then we took Keon a handful of picks later. That's how we got him. Top of the second round.
Damn, that hurts. That stings.
Yeah, Logan, it really does hurt because you know who went one pick later?
Who?
Ladd.
I mean, if you get Worthy or Ladd, that is great. I mean, it's a great pick for you guys.
Yeah, it's just looking like a squandered pick totally at this point, which sucks when you invest so highly at such an important position. But outside of week 1, I mean, Keon hasn't even had a decent game this year. Like, he's just not good. He's not a good fit. And I would rather see those other guys out there on the field. So this was the most dynamic the passing game has looked in a bit. I felt pretty good about the receiver play, even without Kincaid, which is such a change from last week when I thought it was just like, one of the worst receiver performances I've seen in my life in terms of nobody separating. I will say I remain a little bit frustrated by the utilization of Khalil Shakir only being a screen guy. And also, I'm going to continue to harp on this. Joe Brady's infatuation with screens, specifically on 3rd and medium or 3rd and long, I hate it. And I hate it for one reason. It becomes your only option on that play. My philosophy is when you have an amazing quarterback like Josh Allen on a gotta have it down, you want the ball in his hands. And you want him to be in a spot where if he has to get off his first read, second read, it's not there. Okay, he can scramble. He can make a throw out of structure. He can pick it up with his legs. Like, you want him to be the determining factor in the play. Even if you think, oh, the screen is going to be a good counter here. We think that we're bringing a blitz. We think that we have leverage there. We have numbers. Whatever. I still don't want that to be what you turn to on a gotta have it down. First down, fine. Second down, fine. Not there. And they did that on like a huge drive trying to close this game out. And they just got bailed out because they drew a face mask penalty. But I didn't like the process there. Overall, though, they let Josh be Josh more. And we've talked about how this team has added more balance by bolstering the offensive line and putting together the best run game that they have. And, they haven't had the sort of explosive passing weapons downfield. So they've become more of this conservative offense. I like Josh being unleashed. I mean, the guy had 6 touchdowns. I don't know if you heard. I don't want to bury the lead here. It's 6 touchdowns. It was his second game with 3 passing and 3 rushing touchdowns. And he's the only player to do that even once in the Super Bowl era. So the run defense was still terrible for the Bills in this game. They got very little pressure. They let up 32 points. That's the other side of this story. So maybe if you're Buffalo, you just have to put up huge offensive games to beat good teams. I don't think that's a revelation. That's kind of been where this team has been at for years, especially when it comes to like a playoff game. But they can do it. This was an encouraging performance from the offense, which is ultimately the side of the ball I was more disappointed about last week, the side of the ball that I've been saying should be the best in the league, and they just haven't been that, and I was worried about the receivers, and it all came together nicely in this one. And just specifically the way in which they did it, right? Hanging 44, but this feels different than when they hung 40 on like the Panthers. That was on the back of a dominant running game performance, which is great, but I think the passing attack is the most important component to their playoff formula, and that's what they got an A-plus game from in this one.
I'm a peacock. You got to let me fly.
You got to.
Yeah, man. That's one of the most infuriating things about watching Bills games sometimes is just like how stale the offense can feel sometimes where like they're under single back and they're just handing it off. And like, don't get me wrong, the Bills have a really dynamic rushing attack and there's a really nice balance to it because James Cook is so great. And that's a reason this offense is so great. That other, threat. But it is frustrating sometimes. And Josh is just that special, man. And those games are so much fun. I was so hyped you got to watch that in person, but I am still concerned about this damn Russian defense, man.
Yeah. You and me both, buddy.
I mean, dude, we can't just gloss over it. It's the weakest unit, I think, any major contender. 202 rushing yards, 5.2 yards per carry, 3 TDs. It's the 3rd time this season they've allowed 200 or more yards on the ground, the 5th time allowing 175 plus. And they've allowed 5.43 yards per carry this season. This Bills team is a bottom 3 rushing defense in the Super Bowl era by opponent yards per attempt.
Good.
And I think it's just a problem in general. Like the defense, the pass rush is solid, nothing special. I think the secondary and pass coverage has been better recently, but this team is generally kind of slow. And I mentioned that stat earlier about Buffalo in the sub packages. That is why this offseason, and you tell me if you disagree or not, Carson, I think the biggest need for this team, and maybe, I don't know, like, I'm going to say biggest need, but I always am of the fundamental belief that if a guy is so overwhelmingly dominant that you just take the best player available. Mm-hmm. So, like, take that, understand that when I say this. Like, I always believe that if there is a guy that is just so great, you take him. I think their focal point should be a linebacker or a safety that can really change the game. And I just think with the personnel packages that they go with, some of the injury concerns with some of their key guys, like a really dynamic, and I say linebacker or safety, they just need a defender that can tackle and cover in the middle of the field and a field general. It's easier said than done. Those guys don't grow on trees. Like, I can say that they need to focus on that. They could take a guy and it just not be the right pick. But I think that has to be the number one concern for the Bills going into this offseason.
I agree. Safety has been such a huge point of emphasis. I mean, like, what they've been doing. They bring back Jordan Poyer from retirement. Cole Bishop has been playing better. That's encouraging. But that's been the key position that stands out. Linebacker is good to mention, too, though, because their linebacking core has regressed so much. Terrell Bernard, I thought, played a good game this past week, made a lot of impact plays, actually, in the run game. When they did get a stop, he was usually involved in it some way. He's had a bad season, though, and the real tough one is, Matt Milano is just, bad now. And he even played a decent game this past week, but overall this season, he's been bad. This is a guy who 3 years ago was an all-pro, and just injuries and aging, he has totally fallen off a cliff. So, yes, Logan, I'm not tricking myself with this defense. They still let up 32 points. Sean Tucker had the game of his life. You know that's susceptible to happen at any time. A great rushing attack is going to have a good day against the Bills defense. But the question is just going to be, can the Bills offense have an even better day? And this is why I continue to refuse to write them off, to take them out of I think I still had them in my top 5 contenders, but I haven't moved them outside of that because I do still have so much faith in the offense, and you get Kincaid back out there, and the passing game doing what it did this week, that's the big takeaway to me. Also, yeah, Josh just being a fucking psycho, dude. Oh, my God. The last 2 rushing touchdowns in this game, he was laughing maniacally on the last one. He was making, these hyena sounds. It was electric. That's what you need out of Josh Allen to get the best version of him. You need him loose, feeling like he can just be who he is, and that's exactly what he did in this one. The Bills' offense, Logan, it's so funny. I have been more critical of the offense this year than, pretty much, any year in the Josh Allen era. Here's how high the standard is for that. They're second in points per drive. They're the number 2 scoring offense on a per drive basis in the NFL, and they're second in net yards per pass attempt, and they're 5th in net yards per rush attempt. I think that is always important to keep in mind when we talk about some of these things that have been an issue in a couple games. They're still better than pretty much everybody in the NFL on that side of the ball. And when they are playing their best, they are literally better than everybody else on that side of the ball, which is probably what they're going to have to be if they want to win the Super Bowl. And that's possible. Like we've said a million times, everybody's flawed. The Bills have a big flaw. The Bills also have a superpower. And it's going to come down to how much they can mitigate that flaw and how incredible their superpower comes through in a playoff run. What is your next takeaway, my friend?
Well, it's a team that had the kryptonite for the Bills. I think it's time to just blow the Falcons up, man.
Oh, my God.
I just think
Are you advocating for that sort of thing?
Yeah, I just think we drop one on Mercedes-Benz.
Oh,
Superdome.
my God. Logan, with the terrorism again?
Yeah.
You're back? I thought you quit.
No, I'm back on.
After
the Falcons
stuff.
Dude, 5 straight losses. I think I'm done with Atlanta.
Well, yeah, I get it. I just don't think that, the whole city needs to
It's
pay.
cool. After I do it, I'll drop a care package of like skinny jeans or something. The city will be fine.
That sounds tough.
The Falcons were 3-2, man. They had just defeated Buffalo. Spirits were high. It felt, this is the turning point for Atlanta. They've dropped 5 straight, man. Back-to-back overtime losses versus the Colts and the Panthers. They get outscored 17-6 in the second half versus Carolina. Failed to stop them on a game-winning drive. Basically, the exact same thing happened against Indianapolis, where they're driving late and just need a stop. Indianapolis converts a 3rd and 21, a 4th and 2 against them. They had a 1-point loss versus New England off of a Parker Romo missed extra point in a muffed shotgun snap. You add on to that, the blowout losses against Carolina, Miami. This is just a soul-crushing season for the Atlanta Falcons. And now, Michael Penix Jr., their first-round draft pick, has now suffered his 5th career season-ending injury. It is an injury to his ACL. And, I just don't know what to be optimistic about with this team, man. This team is too talented to be this middling. And, I'm ready to change a lot of stuff up with Atlanta.
So what does that mean? Are you talking about trading Drake London? Are you talking about trading Bijan?
No, I don't
What
think
does blowing it up look like?
This team is too talented to go into a full rebuild, and I don't really think that's the play. I'm firing Raheem Morris. I'm firing Zach Robinson. I'm keeping Jeff Ulbrich. I think Jeff Ulbrich would be my defensive coordinator if I was starting over. I like him in what he can do.
Yeah, he's done a good job, but that just seems hard to do over a regime change.
I mean,
it's kind of
if that's the case too, then
this coordinator.
I would suggest that. But if that's a deal breaker for the new staff, I wouldn't be married to him. I would encourage that because I think he's a good DC. But no, I couldn't do that because that's what's so frustrating about this Atlanta team, man. Oh my gosh, they just can't get over the hump and then they fall apart. Like all the years with Arthur Smith with all this talent, and they just can't get it done. And then this with Morris and Robinson. And you look and they've got Bijan. And they've got Drake London, and they've got Kyle Pitts. And I know their offensive line was basically doomed from the beginning of this season, so I think that's important context. And when this team was struggling during the middle of this season, a lot of it had to do with some of the injuries they sustained on defense, too. So, I think that context is important with Atlanta. But good teams and good organizations are able to overcome some of those issues, and I just don't think Zach Robinson is that good of a mind. I don't think Raheem Morris is that good of a coach, and I just think you got to figure out some of these big things organizationally. Head coach, quarterback, and I just don't think you can bank on Kirk and Penix. Well, Kirk's done. Kirk's washed. Kirk's actually just completely cooked. He's going to be gone after this year. They're just going to cut him. He'll probably sign on a minimum deal as a backup to some team. Penix, I just don't know if you can bank on him being your guy considering his injury history and his performance. Zach Robinson, I think, is a bad offensive coordinator. Like, there's just so much structurally wrong with Atlanta that I think you have to address in this offseason. The fact that now you have lost to the Carolina Panthers twice, man. Like, say what you will about them beating the Buffalo Bills. Like you said, dude, anybody with a good running game is going to be able to exploit that. I'm done with Atlanta. I had high hopes for them this season. I just think you've got to make some big structural changes to your organization and overhaul some things. So I'm not saying rebuild, sell off some of these great players. I think if they're under contract, you hold on to them. They're very talented guys. I think you try to find that perfect fit that can maximize your offense and squeeze the most juice out of Bijan and Drake London. That, to me, is the biggest travesty with Atlanta, Carson. The fact that they can't consistently get, production out of this offense.
Yeah, they have had just a disgusting season. And, even though the last 3 games, I mean, they're pretty much all 50-50, right? Super close. They're all losses because that is the Falcons' lot in life, I guess. Logan, they haven't had a winning season. They haven't had a 500 season since 2017, dude. And these recent years where it's okay, we've drafted an elite skill position talent in Kyle Pitts, and then another one in Drake London, and then another one in Bijan Robinson. What happens every year? 7-10, 7-10, 8-9. Now 3-7 this year, dude. It is just really, really ugly. So I agree with you. I think unequivocally you're going to make a change at head coach. I think all those guys are out. Penix, I don't think is the guy. He's 25 years old. He was already just too inconsistent, too inaccurate, and now this injury thing sucks, but it probably just makes the decision even clearer. I don't know if that means that they are going to move on from him. We'll see if he can even make a healthy recovery. I don't know. Everything is up in the air there, but big picture,
well, and I just mean for next year, too, I wouldn't bank on him being available. I just think you need to get a guy who can start games for you in the house.
It's just so disappointing because you look at the talents who they do have or how much they've invested at some of these premier positions, and then you think about how much they spent and invested at edge this past year, which has been the biggest hole, and it's I thought Atlanta was going to be a solid team. Some people thought Atlanta was going to make the playoffs, and they suck. And they've had some close losses, but they're also 27th in points per drive and 24th in points per drive allowed. They're a bad football team, right? They've had a couple close losses. Like you mentioned, they've also had a couple of embarrassing blowouts to not good teams. It's a really bad spot for them to be in, and I mentioned how much they invested at the edge position this past year. Part of that was trading up in the draft so they could take James Pierce. That now means the Rams have their first-round pick this year. A first-round pick that is going to be in the top 10, could be higher than that now that they're without Penix. I mean, they've got a couple light games coming up on the schedule, but they've also got some tough ones after that. Like, I don't know. This team's going to suck no matter what, right? Even if it's 6 wins, you gave up what's going to be a top 10 pick for the 26th pick for a guy who has been okay for you, playing like
It's like, damn, man,
half your snaps.
I would really love to have another reload, shot in the chamber to go and maybe get a quarterback or, just to have that talent on your roster, man. You should never, especially in the NFL, like the NBA is one thing. You really got to be careful giving away first-round picks in the NFL. And the only reason I say that is I just feel like, don't get me wrong, you need to be careful dealing away first-round picks in any sport. The NFL is just such a, one injury, one thing can go wrong, and your season is just in complete shambles.
Yeah, I think just injuries overall are more of a factor. Players regress quicker. Like, things are just more volatile in the NFL year to year. You really never know where that pick is going to land. It would have been nice for the Falcons to have their umpteenth 8th overall pick. That's where they took Drake London, that's where they took Bijan, that's where they took Penix. They love picking 8th overall, and it really might land there again this year, but they're not going to get it. It's going to go to the Rams, which is going to be fun. But I just don't see anything to feel good about other than Bijan and Drake London here, and I'll leave it at that. So I would not move off of either of those guys. I think they are just supreme talents, and I think they're both so young that they'll be able to work with your next timeline. But major changes are needed. Absolutely, for the Falcons, because this is just unacceptable what they're doing out there on the football field, and the season is over. There's another team, though, Logan, that got some new life for their season. They've been doing fine as is, but we saw the 49er offense, the healthiest that it's been all year. Brock Purdy back out there, Juwan Jennings on the field, Ricky Pearsall back on the field, and CMC, Kittle, these guys have been healthy as of late, staying healthy. And they got a good win. I mean, they put up 40 on the Cardinals and looked great on offense. I think that the takeaway from this game is just that the 49ers are really legit. And obviously the defense has been devastated by injuries, absolutely. But they've still held up okay. And now this offense that has been chugging along, and Mac Jones has done really well, but they haven't had all their weapons. They've got all their firepower back. So I thought that Brock played well in his return. He floated a couple balls in harm's way, but those were not punished, and he was pretty good overall. He threw a couple dimes. It was an efficient passing game. CMC went off. So I just think we got to take note of the Niners. They've been winning games with major, major absences, and it's been such a testament to their coaching and the brilliance of Shanahan and Saul that we've given so much credit. The defense, you're not getting your stars back. They're done. But offensively, could this be a group that is closer to the top of the league than they've been, where they've been more average? When they put the running game together and they've got this extremely talented receiving core overall, we know that within this infrastructure, Purdy can put up some really efficient numbers. And I think they're worth watching. I mean, they are in an incredibly tough division because I still think the Seahawks and Rams both, I would have the Rams number 1 out of the 3, but are better than the 49ers, even at full strength. Mostly because those defenses are so elite, and the Niners defense, again, they're hanging in there, but they just don't have the talent. But they are going to be a team that absolutely should be in the playoffs and has the potential to win a game, maybe 2. I still think, again, there's not quite enough talent on both sides of the ball, but the offensive talent is there, and I thought it was encouraging and good to see it all back out there and working for the Niners.
Yeah, I mean, and they've been just consistent again this year, man. I think a lot of people, you can kind of just quickly forget. I know that last year was a really down year for them. A lot of one-score games, a lot of really close games down to the wire against divisional opponents didn't go their way. But you just can't forget San Francisco's track record and how consistently they've been great year over year throughout circumstances, throughout injuries, quarterback changes. I know you mentioned this, you've mentioned this throughout the season, midseason awards too, but it just goes back to the coaching staff and how well they prepare their guys and just this organization, top to bottom. I think this is a return to form, and you can't play around with the Niners. I think the Niners are just a sneaky, I wouldn't say contender, but I wouldn't want to run into the Niners in the playoffs. This is a team that prepares their ass off, and defensively, I do think that a good team could have their way with them, but they can match their firepower. And I wouldn't want to run into the Niners in a wild card scenario or something like that. I think that they're a dangerous team, especially at full strength with all this talent. And they're deep. The offensive talent, what we saw from them when they were down, all these key guys, was really impressive to me. It wasn't just the big names. Like Jawan Jennings has missed a lot of time this year. I think Pearsall is a legitimate stud. Kittle is still among the best players at his position in football. McCaffrey has been available. Like, I agree with you, man. I think the Niners can kind of get overlooked with how good this division has been and their down season last year. I definitely wouldn't want to see them in the playoffs.
No, they're coming, man. They're coming. They're getting healthy, and they've done everything they need to put themselves in position to make the playoffs, winning games when they were down. So definitely a team to watch down the stretch. What is your last takeaway from this week for us, Logan?
Admittedly, this is my least passionate and probably most lukewarm, but I do believe it to be true. I just think Shedeur Sanders is better than Dillon Gabriel, and Cleveland needs to get this guy on the field and some more reps. First of all, I just want to say this. I don't like the discourse around Shedeur. I know that Carson and I have been critical at points throughout this season, the mime shit. That was strange. I don't get why everybody's sandbagging him after his first career game. I think that Shedeur, I look at like Bronny James now, where the media discourse around him has become so comically stupid and just, like, I get it. He is Deion Sanders' kid, and so you know that people are going to click on this and interact with it, but you're using him like a punching bag. That's what I don't like. Like Rex Ryan, what the fuck are you talking about, Rex? Oh, he's sitting over there pouting. Blah, blah. Well, why do you care where he's sitting on the field after a loss, man? Frankly, I liked how Shedeur handled the media and conducted himself after his first career game. And I just think that if you're going to be critical at him with the mime shit, I think you should give him props when he is professional and acts like a leader. I liked how Shedeur conducted himself. I think he is, I don't know if he has matured fully, if I can say that he is completely changed, but this game, I liked how he looked. And I think that if you were going to bag on him when he looks dumb, I think you need to give him props when he is doing the right thing. And I thought he did all the right things after this game, and I just like how he conducted himself. Now, I get it. The stat line was bad. 4 of 16, 47 passing yards, but it's like malicious. The media is out to get him, and they want this kid to fail. And so I'm rooting for Shedeur. Everybody is so negative about him, and I still see the ability. That is what I can't bail on with Shedeur. I think he is so much more talented than Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel, whatever, man. Sure, he's good in the presser. I don't give a fuck. Who cares if a guy's good in the presser? Can he throw a football? Can he create separation? Can he create out of structure? Dillon Gabriel is number 5 this year in bad throw percentage. All the while, he is number 1 in fewest intended air yards per attempt. And I think that's something you mentioned very early on after one of his games. That's like an oxymoron, man. The guy can't be your starter when he's not throwing the ball downfield and he's completely inaccurate. He's 3rd worst in EPA per play. He averages 171 total yards of offense per game. The best thing I can say about Dillon Gabriel is he doesn't turn the ball over. With Shedeur, I get it. Again, the stat line was bad. He's just more dynamic than Dillon. I've watched a lot of Browns football this year. Shedeur excited me. He has got a playmaking kind of feel to him. He can push the ball downfield in a way that Dillon can't. He will attempt tight window throws. I think he is capable of creating out of the pocket with his legs. I think he has starting quarterback tools. And at this point, with the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation, I get the results were not convincing. But I would rather bet on a guy that I watch and go, he has the tools to be something better than he is right now, than a guy that I look at and go, wow, he is so thoroughly mediocre and uninspiring and looks like a backup quarterback. I think Shedeur could be a starter in this league. Don't get me wrong, he has his flaw. And if you guys listened to my take on Shedeur before the season started, it was very similar to how I feel about him now. He has got a flaw. It is the fact that he holds the ball way too long. And with this offensive line, he just can't do it. There are a lot of instances that I watched him in this game where I'm like, bro, get rid of it. Get rid of it. The guy ran his route. He got to his spot. Throw the ball. Let's give him some grace. Let's give him some time to have some growing pains. They mentioned it before when he came in. He didn't have any first-team reps coming into this week, so he's not used to playing with these guys. This is a guy that, frankly, has gotten the short end of the stick all year long. We've heard it. He's been the third quarterback. So I don't think he was extremely prepared or ready to come into this game. I don't think that fully rested his feet. I put some of that on Kevin Stefanski. More importantly, though, it's his first game on short notice, and I didn't hate everything that I saw from Shedeur. I want to give him some grace. I want to give him some time to show us what he can do. Again, I think he has some major flaws that he needs to correct over the end of this season. But I'm more bought in on Shedeur than I am Dillon Gabriel. I think Dillon Gabriel at his best could be a backup in this league, and I think Shedeur, again, has starting quarterback tools. So I don't know, man. I don't know if the Browns just don't like him and his personality. I'm willing to give him a shot, and I think that is the best course of action. What do you have to lose, man? You're going to end up with a top 3 pick anyway. Like, let's see what Shedeur's got, man. Let's put our chips down and our cards on the table.
I would rather see Shedeur for the rest of the season, literally just for that point. Like, why the fuck not see what you've got? Dillon Gabriel sucks. You know that Dillon Gabriel sucks. He has no NFL starter traits, literally. And Shedeur has more upside. I think Shedeur has more talent, and your season is lost. So why not do it? You know, if the Saints wrongfully benched Spencer Rattler, ruining my 32-team league fantasy season, so Tyler Shuck could get some reps, I think that Shedeur certainly should have the same opportunity. That being said, Stefanski did say that if Gabriel clears concussion protocol, he's going to be the starter again next week. So they are low on Shedeur. And Shedeur discourse is really the worst, man. I mean, it just
sucks.
So
I just
strange.
feel so bad for him, man. He is like he's a tool for like the media, and like I just don't like that. Well, in Rex Ryan,
big media member Logan Camden.
No, I'm just saying, like,
media.
I don't want to use Shedeur as a punching bag, or it's like low hanging fruit in just. I don't know, man. I really don't like how Rex Ryan was talking about him on ESPN. It really rubbed me the wrong way, and low-hanging fruit.
No, it totally is. I mean, the Bronny comparison is right. Like, there's a certain somebody who will make a video every single time that Bronny James sets foot on the floor talking about how awful he is, and it's like, if that's what you're doing, if that's how you're choosing to allocate your energy instead of, talking about interesting things happening on the basketball court or on the field, I don't know why you're doing what you're doing. You probably don't actually like the game that much, and you're just trying to get those clicks wherever you can. And I think there's definitely an element of that with Shedeur, although Shedeur is in a more prominent position now. He's actually starting, at quarterback for an NFL team, and those guys are always going to get a lot of attention no matter what. But it's just so ridiculously polarizing, everything involving him, and like I think the truth is absolutely somewhere in the middle where you get to this place where it's like Shedeur falls all the way to the 5th round, with which his talent I do not think made sense, and I don't think really anybody thinks made sense. And then you have this faction of people who say, okay, the NFL is colluding against Shedeur. They're treating him unfairly, which, like, I totally understand that perspective. But then that leads to, like, this insanely rabid stan culture for Shedeur of people defending him at all costs, of people hating Dillon Gabriel, like, totally beyond what is appropriate, of people excusing when he does some really weird shit. Like the mime stuff, that's some of the most incomprehensibly strange media interaction that I've ever seen from an athlete. And Justina Anderson, who is a totally unserious individual, but did you see her tweet about like how Shedeur completed the against all odds completion on 3rd and 10? And it was like a little 3-yard check down to Judy on like a drag, I think. And then he just made the defender miss and picked up the first down. Like, I've also seen a ton of people being like, the Browns are sabotaging him because he hasn't had first team reps. And it's like, that's not how football practice functions at the NFL level, at the college level. 3rd string quarterbacks, even backup quarterbacks, don't get reps with the first team.
There's a classic quote. I think it was Tom Moore for the Indianapolis Colts. And
I know
somebody was like, somebody goes, why don't you guys ever practice with Peyton out? Give the second guy some quarterbacks. He goes, if 18 goes down, we're fucked. We don't practice fucked. And, I mean, it's pretty good.
Like, there's just only so much time in a practice. You're not going to allocate it to giving, a second or third
Now,
string
I can't
quarterback
agree
reps
with
the first
people
team.
that go, there is something there that we don't know about with their relationship. I think there is some murkiness there when you consider all of the factors that Dillon Gabriel has been probably the worst starting quarterback in the NFL since he took over, or one of, like bottom three. Mm-hmm. He has really shown no tools. The fact that the Browns took him over Shedeur 2 rounds before him, and you don't traditionally draft 2 rookie quarterbacks in the same draft. And so that would indicate that the owner made that call. And so I agree that their relationship isn't 100. There's something there. My issue with the Shedeur media coverage is just the fact that they can't get off his dick, man.
No.
Whatever he does, it gets overanalyzed, it gets hyper-fixated on, and it's like, can you guys just leave him alone and let him play? Like, where he's sitting on the bench, his mannerisms, his body language. Like, guys, he was the third-string quarterback for the Browns coming into this year.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about, I don't know, man. Who was that bum for? We're not talking about Tim Boyle, bro.
Yeah.
Like, why are we talking so much about Shedeur?
No, you're right. And, like, I think maybe the counter some people would come with to that is to say, well, Shedeur has propped himself up in a lot of ways, right? If it's with the whole, like, his persona, all of the, like, legendary branding that he attaches to himself. I personally don't think that justifies it. I don't think that that's fair. At the end of the day, I think the guy fell to the 5th round. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, yeah, he fell to the 5th round and that was deserved because I don't like Shedeur, and then also say Shedeur needs to be treated as if he was taken as a top 5 pick. Like, you can't criticize him on both ends, and I think he is getting a lot of that. I don't think he's always put himself in position to avoid that media criticism, even if it comes down to just little dumb shit, right? Like the speeding tickets in the offseason. Me personally, I don't give a fuck about that, okay? He's a young man. Him driving fast to me does not have the correlation to reckless living and irresponsibility, and he can't be a leader that I'm sure some people would like to attach. But again, you're not doing yourself any favors. You are giving the opposition, and there's a lot of opposition, ammunition, and maybe that responsibility shouldn't be on him, but that's the way it's played out. I do feel bad for him. There is clearly this massive resentment, whether it's because people think he's overrated, entitled because he's the son of Dion. I do think that there's an element of, the proud, boisterous black man. A lot of people wanting to rag on that guy, see that guy taken down a peg. Like, I think all of these things factor into it. I mean, the prank from Jeff Ulbricht's son, like, that was so vicious on draft day. Like, there's just all of this nastiness, absolutely. And I think that has to be pointed out. I also think that there is this insane culture of defending Shedeur no matter what that happens on the other side of the spectrum here. The reality is, I thought Shedeur sucked in his debut, but I don't think that means Shedeur sucks. He's dropped into a really difficult offensive situation, obviously. The thing that I think we have to monitor with him is just, like, is that internal clock there for the NFL? Because over 3.2 seconds time to throw, Shedeur doesn't just take a shit ton of sacks. And this was a thing at Colorado. This was the biggest red flag with him as a prospect. He takes the worst sacks I've ever seen. I mean, he takes turn my back to the defense, run 15 yards backwards, and then you take the sack there. He lost 27 yards on these 2 sacks, and that's like routine for him. So that's just a complete drive killer in one play. And then the pick that he threw was also really bad. And 4-16, I mean, no matter what the offensive context is, that's terrible. So
yeah,
it's not that Shedeur is actually this brilliant talent who's been suppressed by the powers that be, and he's being kept down by the man, and he's actually going to be incredible. And he was actually, if you really dig into the film, he was even incredible as he was 4-for-16 with a pick and 27 yards and took 2 sacks. I'm certainly not saying that. I do think he's a better talent than Dillon Gabriel, though, and as much as anything, you got 2 young quarterbacks. One of them clearly is not the guy. See what the other guy has. See if maybe he is the guy, or if he shows you a little something more. But I do think he's in this really tough spot because, like you said, I don't think the Browns front office wanted him. I think only Jimmy Haslam wanted him. I think forced their hand on that. And so if you're in a spot where the decision makers don't like you, because they were forced to roster you when they didn't want to. It just sucks. It just sucks everything that comes with the Shedeur experience
so
for his
toxic.
sake. And I think for the team's sake, like, it's just all really unfortunate and ultimately is going to get way more airtime than a fifth-round rookie quarterback stepping in for a football team that has 2 wins ever should. In fact, what we should all be talking about is Myles Garrett and the fact that he is having the best defensive season of his career and the fact that he is on pace, in my opinion, to be on the Mount Rushmore of defensive players, and he could easily have 20 sacks this year, and he could push J.J. Watt when you're talking about tackle for loss territory. He's not going to get to 39, which is J.J.'s record, but he could have the next best tackle for loss season. That, to me, is what matters with the Cleveland Browns. There's an all-time great player who's just kind of being squandered. But is there anything else you want to say about Shedeur? Shedeur? Should we hit the Shedeur? 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 Shedeur, perfect timing.
Shedeur.
Yeah, he just should not have pretended to be a mime. He shouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
Really weird.
That's actually my only gripe.
Yeah, that's the biggest gripe, I would say. That's a spot where it's like, dude, just don't.
And, like, if you're going to be
Do
a
something
mime, dude,
weird.
at least do the invisible box.
That's what I'm saying. Do the invisible box. I mean, maybe a little bit of face paint could have been nice, a costume. It's like, it just comes across as like half-hearted, half-assed, and I don't know. If you're going to do it, just do the damn thing. All right, my last takeaway, Logan. I'm worried about the Chargers. And even though they got destroyed by the powerhouse that is the Jacksonville Jaguars, led by the sex symbol that is Liam Cohen, LA is just like running a simulator on how hard you can make life on a quarterback this season. It's completely absurd. And I think that they're in danger of missing the playoffs. Like, you look at the schedule that they have in front of them, man. It's not easy. And this is a totally different team without Joe Alt on the field. We've talked about it since early in the year, but with Alt and Slater, with the healthy tackles, this team could have been a contender, absolutely. But with both of them out, it's one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen. We have some horrific offensive line play this year, Logan. The Chargers, the Raiders, oh my God, my poor sweet Gino. Oh my God, it's horrific. The Texans, like, there are some groups out there that are just totally outclassed every week, and the Chargers may be the worst of them. So just an inept offensive performance. And remaining on the schedule, dude, they have the Eagles. They go to Kansas City. They go to Dallas. You know, that's not a guaranteed win for them. The Dallas defense looked better. It was against the Raiders, but they played a good game this past week, and their offense can always put up points. Texans, incredible defense. And at Denver, like, they're just going to go up against especially some really good defenses, Philly, Houston, Denver, who can exploit their horrific offensive line play. And I feel so bad for Justin Herbert, dude. Like, the not his fault thing, we all know that perhaps it's played out, and we've been talking about it for years, but it remains so true, and it's truer now than it's ever been before. This guy is just playing football in impossible circumstances, and it sucks. So I think he can still will them to the playoffs, but I also think there's a world in which they're just too decimated by injury, and they can't get through.
I mean, the thing that kind of worries me after this past week with the Chargers is Liam Cohen just a genius, or should we be really worried about this run defense?
No, Liam Cohen is a genius. He was cooking in the run game.
Dude,
He
the
was
power.
cooking.
I mean, the power running game just ground him into submission.
Yeah. I would give more credit to the Jags for that than I would criticize the Chargers. The Chargers' run defense has also been an issue, so I think it's a combination of the two.
I think the Chargers are probably going to miss the playoffs too. Like, I'm just like doing the calculations, and like with the state of the AFC West and the AFC East, the fact that the fact that the Patriots and the Bills are going to make it, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of those teams is going to win the division. The Broncos are going to win the division, I think, pretty clearly. I guess the Chargers could, but I think that the Broncos are just
It's
better.
unlikely.
Kansas City is probably going to be my pick to be the second team out of the AFC West. Chargers do have that head-to-head win, though, which could be an interesting little tiebreaker, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers, if they beat the Chiefs, will make it.
They're in.
The Chiefs need to win that head-to-head game.
That's a big game. I don't know, and then I look like the Steelers. Like, it's going to be a really interesting AFC wild card race when we get down to it, man.
Yeah. The Chargers do have a game and a half up right now on the teams.
And they
that
have
are
the
in
head-to-head
pursuit.
against Pittsburgh too, right?
Mm-hmm. So that helps.
It does.
But I'm not saying that like they're going to miss it. I'm saying they're in danger of missing it. And this is a team that was playing such good football early in the year and it really shouldn't be in this spot if not for some really bad luck. But unfortunately, they are the Chargers and they are cursed and they do have terrible luck indeed. There you have it, folks. Our thoughts on the Week 11 action. Hope that you enjoyed the games that we did not touch on. We didn't touch on because they're fake and they don't matter and we don't care about your teams. No, Logan, that's one of my classic pranks. We don't have time to get to every single game when we're 2 days late. So we hope that you will forgive us, Packers fans, Cowboys fans, et cetera, if we didn't touch on your team. We'll be back and we'll touch on every single game this next week. You better believe it. That'll be a ton of fun. And if you want more of our stuff, you know where to find us. All of our full episodes across our YouTube channel and across all audio platforms. Also on YouTube, you can see all of our video essays, video breakdowns that we do, especially on the NBA, trying to get out one of those a week. So stay tuned in for those. And you can, of course, follow us across social if you want to see all of our content there. TikTok and Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at nerd_sesh. And you can join our Discord if you want to chat with the gang there and be part of our community. So with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.